You got to wait for a gapper.
That is fair down the right field line. Giambi on his way to third. And they're going to wave him around. The throw misses a cutoff man. Shot into the plate. Out of the plate. Derek Jeter with one of the most unbelievable plays you will ever see by a shortstop.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman.
Well, good morning, and a pleasant good Monday morning to each and every one of you. We welcome you, as always, to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Gentlemen, I'll be looking today. Casey McAllister, Paul Fritzner, you guys all right? Good weekend?
Yeah, it was a pretty good weekend for Chatterbox. Miami versus Oklahoma. We had a lot of people join in on the show.
Tens of thousands.
Yes, literally tens of thousands of people. It was
over 100,000 total.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, those are big numbers.
Yeah, it was a very big
To
day.
watch softball,
Yeah.
Yeah.
women's softball.
Yep. Number one team in the country, Oklahoma. Reed and Casey, Luke West Pauly were up there doing the game, and it was a great game, and it seemed like everybody enjoyed it. Big moment for Chatterbox. Over 100,000 people watched collectively.
Yeah.
I
And
wonder
don't
if
forget-
we'll do those kind of numbers today on our show. Do you think we will?
Well,
We're
if
coming
the-
up short to Miami women's softball.
Well, if the Sooner Boomer family wants to show even more support, we would appreciate it. I don't know if they're in the chat.
That is a big-time sports operation at Oklahoma.
It is.
That is a big league operation, and they're on their way, of course, from the Big 12 to the SEC. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to high noon. We stream on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. We also live stream on Facebook, Chatterbox Sports page. If you'd prefer to join us in podcast form, by all means, just search Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman and you're dialed in. The Reds need help in a number of different areas. We know that. But need number one has to be what to do with the fourth and fifth spots in this starting rotation. Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft, and Hunter Green are going to be fine. But they cannot continue to start Connor Overton and Luis Sessa and run them out there twice every 5 days. Friday night, Overton goes 3 innings, allows 5 runs in an 8-3 loss. Casey, you were there for the big fireworks show.
Yep.
After a great outing by Ashcraft in a 13-0 rout on Saturday, Sessa comes out yesterday, gives up 9 runs in the first inning. They leave him in there because they can't have the bullpen gobble up 8 innings. So he goes 3, allows 11 runs and 14 hits. We keep hearing about Luke Weaver coming back. I don't know if that gets you excited, but there has to be better than these two guys in their minor leagues. There has to be. I mean, no matter who it is, they can't be much worse. Joey Votto is back in Cincinnati, but not quite yet to play for the Reds. Due to Major League rules, Votto had to come off his rehab in Louisville. Now, in a few days, they can send him back to AAA to begin a second stint. We will talk more about the Reds with Bob Nightengale Jr. from Cincinnati.com. He will join us at 10:30 today. Baseball's best team is in town to start a 3-game series tonight, the Tampa Bay Rays. Kevin Cash's team tied a Major League record, 13 straight wins to begin the season. They then lost 2 in a row before beating Toronto yesterday for their 14th win. They're 14-2. Hunter Green gets a ball for the Redlegs in Game 1. First pitch, 6:40. Tickets are available. NBA playoffs off and running. On Saturday, the Cleveland Cavaliers lost their opening round game. That's a best-of-7 series. They all are in the NBA playoffs. That was against the Knicks, 101-97, Game 2 tomorrow night. Other opening game winners out east. The ace seed Miami over the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks, 130-117. Giannis had to leave the game with some kind of back injury. His status is up in the air for Game 2. Without him, the Bucks are done. Game 2 is Wednesday night in Milwaukee. Elsewhere, Sixers top Brooklyn. Out west, the top seed Denver Nuggets hammer Minnesota 109-80. How about the Lakers? They get a double-double from both LeBron James and Anthony Davis in their win over the number 2 seed Memphis 128-111. The defending champion Golden State Warriors lost at Sacramento 126-123. The Phoenix Suns lost for the first time with Kevin Durant in the lineup, 115-110 to the LA Clippers. When Phoenix traded for Durant, the old adage, you got to give up something to get something, right? If you go look at the plus-minus numbers of the bench from Phoenix, this is where that trade kills them. They're good in their front five. When they got to go to that bench, the depth is just depleted. And that is where LA lit up Phoenix in Game 1. In the NHL, the playoffs get started tonight. In soccer, Casey.
Oh, boy.
What in the world happened to your once unbeaten, no longer I might add, FC Cincinnati falling to St. Louis City SC 5-1?
Well, I'm going to keep this as brief as possible because this is a game that you just don't take anything away from. You just forget about it completely. Act like a goldfish, for those of you that watch Ted Lasso would know what I'm talking about. First off, this game was delayed for 2 hours, so that's an excuse for the team, but it's very clear that they came out looking flat. This is a team that we were already very nervous about. They have a play style that was very effective versus FC last year, and it reared its ugly head tonight. Defensively, it was just bad. And like I said before, since the start of the season, it's looked like the offense is just really not clicked yet. It's not figured itself out, and it's not even like the offense would have been able to, I think, keep up with a 5-scored goal game, but it wouldn't have been so bad if they just played better. And the fact that Acosta was out, the stuff with Brenner, and now you're looking at possibly Vasquez being traded away. This team is in a really interesting spot, a very bad-looking future, I will say, if they don't get the transfer right. If they don't get a guy that can replace Vasquez and Brenner, then this team is not going to be nearly what it was a season ago. So I'm very nervous about FC. I don't think that they'll continue to lose like this, obviously. I think it's just the circumstances surrounding it, like the delay.
I got to tell you, though,
injuries,
it's another thing with soccer, Casey, I just don't understand. I made the analogy after you guys informed me how it kind of works, about what's the most, the Premier League is the exclusive league, the most exclusive league. There are others.
Yep.
But I made the analogy and asked you guys a question. You confirmed the question that I asked about baseball, okay? It used to be over in Japan where a player had to play, I think it was 5 years in the Japanese league, before they could become eligible to come to play in Major League Baseball, where everybody wants to play, okay? Kind of like the English Premier League in soccer. That's fine. And then an American team, a Major League Baseball team, would pay a bunch of money to that Japanese league team to bring over, let's just pick Ichiro, okay?
Okay.
All right. All of that transpires, though, in the off-season. I just cannot understand for the life of me how a player signs a contract with a team. They play during the season. They start the season, as is the case with FC Cincinnati. They're now 8 games into the year. How in the world can a player then all of a sudden just vanish after you've built your club as a general manager, as an owner, as a coach, okay? That's what they do all off season, is they put their team together on what it's going to look like once the season begins. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, drones are flying around.
Yeah, I mean, they could.
Snipers
They
picking
could-
your players off.
Well, the biggest thing there is that the seasons don't overlap. So any team that's trying to make a move in the off season is in season for the MLS, but it's in the off season for those teams in Europe.
And let me also say this. They could decline or they could deny a transfer. They already did that once with Brenner.
I remember you
and-
saying that.
And the reason why they let these guys move on is because players want to go play there. They want to move on. And it would be bad business to decline again and then he just sits out. And you lost out on the transfer money, which is really big money for them. $13 million for Brenner is a really big deal. So it's not like they're completely screwed. Like they could go get some guys and fluff out the roster, or they could go get another Brenner and take a risk on a really high-profile guy with that money. But it's just I do understand why it's frustrating for fans that might not understand. For it to happen right in the middle of the season it does stink. I will agree to that. It does stink. But that's what happens when your team gets really good, like FC has been in the past. Players move on. I mean, it happened to them even when they weren't in the MLS. They had players move on to the MLS, and now that they're here, it's a new challenge for the club to figure out how to put another winning product out there. And fans just have to realize that some of these players that we do get aren't going to stick around. Some of them will. Some of them will hang out in the MLS because they've either tried that stint to move on to the English Premier League or any other lower leagues like the German league or
Bundesliga.
Yeah, Bundesliga or any of the other higher touted leagues, but
Still doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if it's all about just cashing checks and making the money, I mean, fine. Then just tell everybody that. But, I mean, that is one screwed up league to have that kind of thing going on.
Well,
I mean, guy signs a contract to play for your team, play for your team. But no, we're going to let him go just so we can cash $13 million check.
yeah, but guys wouldn't want to play.
What about all the fans? They get their money back if all of a sudden they committed to your franchise and bought season tickets and they sell out every single game expecting you to have player A, B, C, D, and E? Are the fans getting a refund on their tickets?
Yeah, but,
No is the answer to that question.
but guys wouldn't want to play in the MLS if they didn't have the freedom to go be able to do this.
I understand that, but the whole setup and structure is just, it's a mess.
I am on your side actually on this. I get it from a fan perspective, and I still don't really understand how the MLS league has been successful as to this far. Just from this case alone, I'm not sure about the other teams that they have to deal with this
Well, I'm sure
on a
they
regular
do.
basis. But it's very strange to me because fans won't want to go to watch a team fall apart right in the middle of the season. Like it's proven. When a player gets injured, just for an example, like if God forbid Joe Burrow went down, you're going to lose out on a lot of fans. You're going to lose out on all those season ticket holders. They're going to sell their tickets or they're just not going to show up. And it's going to be somewhat of a similar process, I'm afraid, for FC once we start losing these guys. And I don't know. It's like I said, it's a new challenge for them, and it's got to be – you have to know with that expectation in mind when you're rooting for an MLS team. When they acquire a player that was a fringe guy that could have maybe joined a higher league but decided to come play for us because he would be a star possibly, you have to know what the risks are involved with that
All right.
said player.
Well, they're all dealing with the same thing.
Yeah.
Nick Kirby, kind enough to point out, I had talked about in the monologue, they need to do something with that, the Reds, in that starting rotation. Overton has gone on the injured list, And Luke Weaver is going to replace him. Now, again, here we are in a situation where you tell me as a Reds fan, and we're going to ask Bob Nightengale Jr. about this in a minute. Okay? Luke Weaver was a former number 1 draft pick by the St. Louis Cardinals. This is going back to, all the way back, all right, to 2014. A year and a half later, he's in the big leagues. Okay? Cardinals run him out there, a bunch of starts, not very good. Okay? They decide to deal him to the Arizona Diamondbacks. So he goes to the Diamondbacks, and that was a big deal. That was in the Paul Goldschmidt trade. And Weaver, a lot of people felt like, being a number 1 pick, had been in the big leagues already a couple of years, that he was a guy that was a big part of that trade. Okay, now he did go through some injuries, had a right shoulder strain, and we always talk about it all the time. You start getting into shoulders, trouble. Medical science has not figured this out. We had Tim Kremchek on the show earlier. I mean, he's one of the top 2 guys on the planet to do reconstructive Tommy John elbow surgery. You have an elbow injury, chances are really good you're going to come back. There's even a good chance you're going to come back and throw harder than you did before the surgery. You start getting into shoulders, the track record is not good of coming back. But Weaver's been able to come back and pitch. But the problem is, wherever he's gone, nobody's wanted him around very long. Okay? Diamondbacks, 30 starts. Then he's hurt 3 years in a row. Finally ends up getting healthy again. Goes from last year, the Diamondbacks, to the Royals. He's released by Seattle. He's 29 years old. I mean, is this really who you want to be bringing up to give your fans some hope? I mean, nothing against Luke Weaver. I root for the kid. I mean, I'm sure he's a great kid. But, I mean, you got guys tearing it up in Double-A, and I know you get into the whole, we start the clock on them and all that kind of stuff. The fans are already down about the direction of the franchise on multiple levels. Give the fans something to – they get excited about Ashcraft, right? You're excited about Hunter Green. You're excited about Nick Lodolo.
Yeah.
Why not give him another guy to run up here?
I have a question.
Instead of a 29-year-old who's pitched for 5 teams. Seriously.
Yeah. What are, besides moving a guy up, is there trade options available, or like what does that look like besides bringing someone up from?
You're not gonna make a trade like that in April. Like, you're not gonna go out and get. You're not gonna go out and get a 4th starter in a big trade in April for a team like the Reds. Just not, like, the Reds just aren't in that position right now. They're not gonna give up organizational capital to just have a 4th starter. They're just gonna have to trust somebody within the organization already. Okay. Maybe that's Luke Weaver. And I understand what Tom's saying, some frustration there. And I'm not nearly as well versed in the Reds minor league system as some people in this chat probably are. But you're not going out there and making a trade like that in the month of April already. Maybe at the deadline.
So the only option is bringing someone up. I've thought this since the beginning of the season, and I know I'm not a big baseball guy, but I thought, why not bring up some of your minor league guys? Like, I thought Encarnacio Strand or Ellie De La Cruz, they should at least have a chance to be on the starting roster. I know this is not pitchers necessarily, but I don't know. I think that would have brought a lot of excitement to the Reds organization. I think they will eventually do it, but I have not heard very many minor league guys talked about in the Reds farm system, at least from all the conversations that take place. It's a lot of CES and Ellie De La Cruz and Myers, I think. But other than that, I didn't, is there any pitchers, Tom?
Well, the kid that's just, the kid that's dealing right now is this left-hander who's pitching at Double-A. And it has long been considered the truth. I don't know if it's considered the truth any longer. Most people felt like if you could be a really good pitcher and or player at Double-A, it meant that you were really not far away from being close to the big leagues, meaning some guys have made the jump Double-A to the big leagues. That's Andrew Abbott. He's 23 years old. Let me see what round he was drafted in. He's a high draft pick by the Reds. He was the second-round draft pick out of the University of Virginia in 2021. So he's a college kid. He's 23 years old. That's very young. But the point is, the ACC, he's pitched big-time college baseball, okay? He's been in the minor leagues where, look, I mean, he went to two teams his first year, okay? Only made by the time he got signed and all that. But the last year, he won 10 games. He pitched almost 120 innings. Okay, he finishes last year at Double-A. They start him again at Double-A this year because his success wasn't very good at Double-A last year. Now, granted, he's only pitched 10 innings so far this year in Double-A. He has struck out 25 batters and walked one.
Wow.
25 batters. What in the hell is a third start at Double-A going to be for him? I mean, you don't want to bring him to the big leagues right now? Don't bring him to the big leagues. But, I mean, the guy's faced, 35 batters, and he has struck out 25 of the 35 batters.
That's a ridiculous number.
Right? So, and he struck out, if I'm not mistaken, 9 in a row in a game a start ago. So, I mean, what in the world's he doing staying at Double-A? I just say to myself, and I'm sure there's a million reasons that Nick Kroll and everybody else would give you, and I'm sure they're justifiable reasons. All I'm saying is, instead of bringing up a guy that 4 or 5 other teams took a flyer on, former number 1 pick, and those guys always get the second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, why not bring somebody up and put him in the rotation and give the fans something to be excited about, because they are genuinely excited, if nothing else on this team. The fans are excited about Green, Lodolo, Ashcraft. Ashcraft's been their best pitcher. Lodolo's been good, really good. But Ashcraft has been lights out.
Yeah. And you look at Double-A, that's the first league where you can really make the assumption that you could make the jump to the major leagues. I'm not saying that they should bring him up. I'm not saying, again, there can't be any decisions made right now in April where you're trying to make a push for any kind of success this season. All you're trying to do this year is get your guys as much major league experience as the year goes on as they need to get, so that eventually you can compete next year. That does not mean bringing up a Double-A pitcher who has faced 35 batters, but what it might mean is bringing that guy quicker up to Triple-A.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And then quicker into the major leagues,
right.
Down the road by July after he's got 2 months of Triple-A experience under his belt. So, yeah, I'm with you on that page, Tom.
Serpoy points out that Stevenson in India, they never played a Triple-A game when they were brought up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
There have been a lot of guys that have made the jump, not just Reds, but from other teams, because some teams do that more frequently than others. One thing I will say about the Reds is, at least in the last number of years, they have not been worried about that proverbial arbitration free agency clock starting. If they feel like a guy is ready for the big leagues, they're going to bring him up and put him on the opening day roster. I will give them a lot of credit for that. They're not burying guys for 2.5 weeks in the minor leagues just so they can, wait on that arbitration clock and all that kind of thing. They'll bring them up if they think they're ready. So, I don't know. I just wonder. All right. But Bob Nightengale Jr. is going to join us in about 5 minutes from now to talk about Weaver coming up. He saw Weaver out there in Arizona during spring training. So he'll have a few thoughts there. Joey Votto. Now, what to do about Votto? Now, the only reason Votto is back with the team, even though he's not on the roster, is because, as I mentioned, in the agreement, the CBA, between the owners and the players, there are rules and regulations and stipulations, and they're there by and large to protect players from getting buried down in the minor leagues and leaving them down there, in this case, on some rehab assignment, okay, for months at a time. And they're in place for a good reason, many good reasons. But in this case with Votto, he was making a late push at the end of spring training. And look, I give Votto all the credit. I've said on this show before, okay, I may not be as huge a Votto fan as maybe some of you are, okay? He's had an unbelievable career. He's been one of the best Reds of all time. There's no debate about that. And no one works harder than Joey Votto. No one. Pete Rose is the closest thing I've ever seen to Votto, as far as just being completely consumed with being great. There are a lot of guys that think they're consumed with being great, when in reality, they're not even consumed with being really good. Votto is consumed with being great. And I give the guy all the credit in the world, because there aren't a lot of people out there in any walk of life that want to do that. But he made that push at the end of spring training. This guy had 2 very serious surgeries, okay, on the triceps area and then in the shoulder that he tried to play through last year. So you got to give him, again, all the credit in the world. He's busted his tail to come back from not 1 surgery, but 2 surgeries. He made a late push at the end of spring training thinking maybe I could be ready in time for opening day. He realized he would not be, and so he accepted the assignment to go down to start his rehab at AAA Louisville. He goes down there. It does not go well. He hits a home run his very first at bat, and after that, I mean, now he had comments, which Bob Nightengale Jr. will share with us here in a minute, about where he thinks he is. But the numbers don't quite paint that same picture. So what the Reds can do now is you keep him around here for a certain amount of time, let him do a lot of his therapy, a lot of his rehab, get swings in the batting cage. He might even take batting practice with a team at the ballpark. So they have to keep him around here for a few days. And if he agrees to it, you could send him out on another rehab assignment. And I have no doubt that that's exactly what's going to happen. Based on what we saw with Votto at AAA Louisville, there's no way, or at least I wouldn't think, there's no way he's going to work out here for X number of days and then declare himself ready to go to face major league pitching, because he was scuffling against AAA pitching. So this is going to be an interesting situation to watch with Votto. Because all of a sudden, Vossler, right? I mean, everybody knew this was coming. It was a nice week to start the year, but now, the big story, and we'll find out more from Bob Nightengale Jr. about this, is Steer yesterday. Did you see what happened to him? So late in the game, it's a massacre, right? Steer's in the game at third. A diving play, which, by the way, his defense after a shaky spring training has really continued to get better and better and better. That was a knock on him, is that he could hit and he wasn't much in the field. His defense is really, really turned around. But, they're saying he's fine. But if you watched it on television or you heard it on the radio, when a player takes himself out of the game right on the spot, I mean, he made a diving play, tried to get an out at second base. Throw was late. But it was a great attempt and a good play by Steer. And then he tried to come up. I know the x-rays say he's okay, said after the game last night. But he did not look good. You can only hope that that this is not a big deal, because he's become a very important part of this team, and I think future for this team. He looks like a keeper, that guy.
Yeah, it looked like, I'm just reading it now, everybody's saying after the game that it looks like David Bell said we'll know more, I guess today, as we would say it, we'll know more this afternoon. But yeah, he's been playing really well lately. Really well. And
yep.
It's nice to see, like I said last week, it's nice to see some signs in the positive direction. Positive signs in the right direction. That's what we can take away right now.
I'm seeing Sir Boy say that he could be Rookie of the Year, or someone said that.
Well, I mean, he keeps playing like he's playing, and there's always a chance they could have a couple of them on there. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look and see if Ashcraft, because he pitched for a little while and then he was out for a long time. If he is technically a rookie this year. I think Lodolo probably pitched too many innings last year, but I don't know about Ashcraft. There are numbers, whether it be from a position player for at-bats, plate appearances, service time, all these kinds of things, which, maybe you're only up for part of the year and you come back the next year, but you're still a rookie. Same thing for pitchers. I believe that he is, but don't know for sure. We'll ask Bob about that here in a minute. Let me know when he's ready to go.
I'll let you know.
So do you feel like when you – so far – the Reds are where they are, 4 games under 500. They split a 4-game series against Philly, Tampa Bay, in town tonight. You feel hope, a little more hope, Paul.
Yeah, sure.
You do.
Yeah, I mean, it's more fun to sit down and watch the games this year than last year when there was just no hope. Said that last week. It just feels like at least this year there's a little you get some excitement. You get some fun. You get something. You feel something. Now, over the weekend, you didn't feel great, but you feel something at least.
Well, Casey felt the roar of the thunder of the fireworks show.
I did.
How do you sit there, and Paul asked you the question off the air before we went on the air, what was the music theme? And you said you have no idea.
Well, like I said, I was more enamored by the fact that when we were done with the game, we went down to the tunnel where the players leave and where the coaches leave and staff leaves, and Hunter Green just pulls right up to all those kids and starts signing autographs. And
very cool.
And also I was listening to our Reds post game on my phone
right
at the same time while enjoying the fireworks, enjoying that.
That's a company man right there.
Yeah, I wanted a
fireworks show and he's got his phone pulled up listening
to
Chatterbox Reds.
His new nickname is CM. Company man.
Company man.
Casey McAllister.
How about that? Very nice.
I like it. It's not as good as Big League Paul.
It's not as good as Big League Paul.
But I'll take CM. I'll take it.
Okay. That you know what? If being Reds fans, as many of you are, that show here with Trace and Nick is excellent.
It really is.
I mean, I know a lot of people, the easy thing to do, maybe you're at the game and you're jumping in your car and you'll turn on that extra inning show, which has been around forever, and that's fine. But, Trace knows baseball. Nick Kirby knows baseball. And so I would highly recommend if, you're jumping in your car coming back from a game or you watch it on TV and you want to hear a little bit more about it, tune into the show. It's right after the games. Is Bobby ready to go?
He is ready.
All right, let's bring in Bob Nightengale Jr., kind enough to join us. He covers the Reds each and every day for Cincinnati.com, the Cincinnati Enquirer. Bobby, no rest for the weary. Roll right into a new series. Let me ask you, I want to start first of all with Joey Votto. You were down there. You had a chance to talk with him over the weekend when he came back from his stint in Louisville. The rules and regulations wouldn't allow him to continue to stay. I know they can send him back out. What were your impressions of what he had to say when he had a chance to visit with you guys over the weekend?
Yeah, I think he was more optimistic than I thought he would be. I mean, if you look at his numbers in Louisville, he's striking out in about half of his at-bats, which you guys have seen Joey Votto. That's not his game. He's a guy who doesn't strike out a ton. So, I mean, it's alarming when you see that. But he's confident. I mean, his shoulder's improving. He's talked about kind of where it was a month ago to where it is today. It's night and day. So it's all encouraging. Things are moving in the right direction. It's just not fast enough where, looking at the stats, I think it's pretty obvious, like, he's not major league ready. And so he admits that, and the Reds obviously take him off the rehab assignment. When you could have pushed it a little bit, where you could have tried to get it down to the last day, but I think there was a realization, like, you're gonna need more than a week to get this figured out. And I think it just points to it was an extensive surgery. I mean, he had surgery for a torn rotator cuff and damage to his biceps. There's a lot of hitters that will probably take a year to get back from that. He tried to come back in 8 months. So it's taking a little bit longer, but he was more optimistic than I thought he would be.
All right, by the rules of the CBA, what logically is next for him, do you think?
Restart a rehab assignment this weekend. You have to take at least 5 days off as a position player. But you still have to have an injury. So, I mean, it is a legitimate. His shoulder is bothering him. It is affecting his swing. I think that's why the strikeouts are up, and he said as much. And people that have watched him in AAA, scouts all say kind of the same thing, that, kind of the range of motion's kind of holding him back in his shoulder. But you can restart one within 5 days after being taken off. So I think when the team goes to Pittsburgh, he'll go back and restart his 20-day rehab assignment in Louisville.
All right. Another move, Connor Overton, who has struggled to begin this season as part of the starting rotation. That was the case again on Friday night. And now Luke Weaver. We were talking about Weaver before you came on the program. 29 years old, former number 1 pick of the Cardinals, was in the Paul Goldschmidt trade, goes to Arizona. He's bounced around since then, had a shoulder injury. What did you see out of him in spring training?
Yeah, excuse me. Just a guy, his changeup is really a big weapon for him. Probably not a guy that you'd put in the same tier as the 3 starters that the Reds have right now, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft. I don't think his upside's that high, but he could be kind of like a reliable number 4 for them. David Bell was in the Cardinals organization when he came up with the Cardinals, and he debuted kind of like the same way Hunter Green did, like really young, maybe 22, 23 years old when he made his debut. Been around, and he's still only 29. So, I mean, he's a guy who, in his past, has had huge upside. He just dealt with a ton of injuries over the last few years. He really hasn't thrown much of a slider. I know that's kind of been an emphasis for him in spring training, was kind of developing that. And Derek Johnson's done a really good job in terms of helping guys add sliders and making them really good. Look at Graham Ashcraft as an example for that. So the Reds see some untapped upside there. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy, which – he had trouble with that in the spring, had a minor setback, and then something that's bothered him in the past. But also, he realizes it's kind of his last chance to start. So I think, it's important for him for his career, if he wants to remain a starter, which he does, to have success with the Reds, kind of right out of the gate.
All right, he's going to get a chance to make a number of starts. Sessa, what are they going to do there, you think?
I think maybe you play it out, maybe a couple more starts, but he's got to be on kind of the last of leash right now. If he does get moved from the rotation, I expect him to get moved to the bullpen, which
sure.
He's had success there. He's out of minor league options, so there's really your only 2 choices are put him in the bullpen or cut ties with him, and I don't see them cutting ties with him. I mean, still a rough start to the season for him. He's giving up a ton of hard contact. There are some guys in AAA like Chase Anderson, who's a veteran. Levi Stout, who's a prospect, and then you have one prospect in AA, Andrew Abbott, who's been completely lights out. He struck out 25 of the 35 batters he's faced, but it would be quite a jump to go from 2 starts in AA to the big leagues, and for a guy that wasn't really on the big league radar to start the season. So there are options if they want to make a change. I just don't know. They might give him 1 or 2 more just to see if he can rebound.
I'm just curious when you sit here and you think about it, Bobby. We all know I think apathy is the word more so than necessarily people, just being down on the franchise. I think there's just a lot of apathy out there. They've been fun to watch, a lot more fun to watch for sure, the first, 2 weeks of this season than they were the first 2 weeks of first month of last season, for that matter, when they start 3-22. But, I made the comment before you came on the air, and it's nothing against Luke Weaver. But it's just that I feel like with, when Lodolo and Ashcraft and Green are going out there, I think it gives the Reds fans some hope. And there hadn't been a lot of hope for a little while. And I just asked myself, why not bring up, Stout, as you're talking about, or Abbott? I mean, Abbott was a guy at the University of Virginia. You're not talking about some high school kid that pitched, 2.5 years in the minor leagues. I mean, he's pitching in the ACC for 3 years, and then all of a sudden now he's pitching minor league baseball for the last 2. Why not bring up a younger guy like that to give the fans something to get excited about?
I mean, I think they'll reach that point probably the second half of the season when you start seeing more prospects come up. I just think they're really focused on making sure bringing guys up isn't going to do harm and hurt their development. I mean, if you remember last year, like Hunter Green, the first couple months of his season, he was getting hit around. Like his fastball was extremely hittable, gave up a ton of home runs, had a lot of rough starts. You could see kind of the flashes of potential, but his numbers weren't good. I mean, until maybe around the All-Star break, the second half of the season when he started to be a little bit more consistent. Same with Nick Lodolo. He struggled in his first few starts and then missed a couple months with a back injury. So I think it's one of those, yeah, those guys are talented. Yeah, they want to push them, and I think they're getting pushed pretty quickly. I mean, wouldn't be shocked if Andrew Abbott's next step is, after another start or two, is AAA, which for a guy who was drafted 2 years ago is pretty quick. But I do think that's kind of the primary concern is, yeah, it'd be great to see these young guys. Yeah, some of them might be kind of knocking on that door, but it's also, you've seen it where it kind of backfires and you call guys up a little bit too early. I think Jose Barrero is probably an example of that. When they called him up in 2020 before he played above A-ball, just to help out for a playoff run, and it's taken him a few years just to get comfortable at the big league level again.
You know, now there's a guy, and I wasn't going to ask you about him until you just brought up his name. I think that is the perfect example. I'm all for getting guys through the system and getting them up here, but there are times and cases and point and individuals where you're like, okay, maybe this guy we shouldn't, and it's no knock on him and his mental wherewithal or any of that kind of thing. It's just that some guys are more ready than other guys. Is Barrero starting to change the narrative on maybe where he was, say, 3-4 weeks ago, even before spring training started, with the way he's playing so far this year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's at least – I think you can put him at shortstop and feel good about it, which I don't think you could have said at the end of last season when he was striking out 40% of the time he came up to the plate and looked really lost offensively. I mean, he still has a ways to go to be an impact offensive player, but I think you at least can put him out there and say, okay, this is our starting shortstop. He's going to play pretty solid defense. He's going to give you at least a decent at-bat. So, I mean, those are improvements. And you have to remind yourselves, I mean, he's still the second youngest player, other than Hunter Green. He's the second youngest player on the team. So, I mean, there's still ways he can still continue to grow. You kind of see him tap into his power a little bit more. He's just a guy, if he can play, if he can continue to improve his defense, if he just hits 240, that's a solid shortstop on most teams. Now, the Reds are hoping they have a lot of shortstop prospects coming up that'll, continue to push them. But, that's not a bad place to start.
Steer, I know they said x-rays were okay after the game last night, but when I see a guy, and you've followed baseball your whole life, Bobby, and been around the game, when I see players walk off the field taking themselves out of the game, an x-ray might tell you one thing. How that guy feels might tell you another. Did you get any feel for that besides the x-rays were okay?
Yeah, I think we'll find out more today just to see how sore it is. But I saw him walking around the clubhouse, and he looked fine. Like, if you didn't know he exited the game with an injury, you wouldn't have thought twice about it. So I thought that was at least a good sign that, he wasn't limping or anything after the game. Obviously a huge part of their team, so they need him to be healthy.
All right. Well, Bobby, we cannot thank you enough for your time as always, and it's going to be fun watching the Rays down there. Before I let you go, I'm going to get somebody on from Tampa certainly sometime soon, hopefully somebody in their front office. I think a lot of people, Bob, ask, what is Tampa doing that other teams, the mid-market, the small market, I mean really getting down to what are they doing that some of these other teams are not doing? Do you have any feel for that? It's probably not a fair question because you don't cover that franchise on a daily basis.
I just think that the biggest difference when you look at the small market teams that have success, whether it's Tampa Bay, Oakland when they were at their best, I mean, the main thing is they have young players who are all in their prime together, which when you're talking about a player's prime is usually between like 25 and 30. You need at least some elite talent, which that means you have to draft or trade extremely well to bring that in if you're going to be small market because you can't sign them from the outside. And then you need all those guys to kind of be in their prime together. I mean, I think that's kind of, you look at like Houston, I think they're obviously a bigger market, but the way they tore everything down to the studs, that's kind of how they've done it. I mean, you look at kind of their pitching staff. They had Justin Verlander and Zach Greinke, but everyone else is kind of, 25, 30 in that range. Alex Bregman, George Springer, Jose Altuve, all those guys came up together. And so I think that's what Tampa Bay does extremely well. You could probably say they're a little bit more cutthroat in terms of when their stars are getting close to making big money, they trade them, and they have to do well in those trades. I mean, I think that's the reason Cleveland has done so well. And they have a lower payroll than the Reds, I believe, and it's just one of those, they trade extremely well. They keep their stars. If like Tampa Bay just did a big contract with Wander Franco, their star shortstop. You see Cleveland do the same thing with Jose Ramirez. So they're keeping their stars, but they're also making sure everyone around them is in their prime. And, I think that's it kind of goes backwards for baseball economics because most guys get paid when they're older versus younger. So I think that's the one thing that small market franchises have to keep in mind is, if you're going to be a little bit cutthroat with your star players, you have to make sure you're building around them with their same age.
All right, Bobby, we thank you for your time, my friend, and we'll look forward to catching up with you soon. Thanks again. Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, Bob Nightengale Jr. Bobby Nightengale Jr. All over the Redlegs. And good stuff there. The other thing is he points out about Tampa Bay. The other thing, and this is something that I'm going to really try and find somebody that we could get on who can discuss this intelligently from the inside. And it's what we've talked about with Tracy Jones a lot and other people. It's not only drafting well, okay, which Tampa Bay must do. I think most of their best players, as he pointed out, are coming over as well in trades when they're deciding to get rid of this guy or get rid of that guy or whoever it might be. The Chris Archer deal a few years ago with the Pirates is a prime example of some of the guys they get back, and now all of a sudden they're good for a couple of years, they ship them off. Now, a lot of fans don't like that. I mean, they want their guys hanging around, somebody to latch on to, and there's something to be said for that. But I'm more interested in what their player development is. I want to know, are the Rays paying their AA pitching coach more money than maybe some other teams are paying their AA pitching coach? Are they paying their pitching coordinator in the minor leagues more than the Dodgers are paying their guy? I don't know. That's what I would like to know, because every bit as important, if not more important, in baseball is player development once you get them. Because at the end of the day, there's a huge pool of players which everybody has access to. Everybody does. Some might spend more in their scouting department than others. Some might spend more in the Dominican than others. Some might spend more in Venezuela than others. But at the end of the day, there's this huge pool of players, okay? So it does separate, how you draft. I really think at the end of the day, most teams, if you did a 15 or 20-year sort of recap of their draft, everyone has hits, everyone has misses. But when you get them into your organization, who is then developing those players to get better? You're getting them anywhere from Dominican players, you're getting them in your academies down there at 16. You can start signing them in the Dominican at 16 years old. If you're drafting them in the United States, you're getting 17 and 18-year-olds out of high school. You're getting 20, 19-year-olds out of junior college. You're getting 22-year-olds out of four-year schools. You can draft them after their third year in Division I. You're getting the same guys, okay? What's development look like? And we've got to find that out about the Tampa Bay Rays. All right, Ham and Eggers, we got a lot of football coming up today. One of the most legendary voices in sports over the last 35 years, I worked with him in Chicago, is Wayne Larrivee. He was the voice of the Chicago Bears. He was a television voice of the Chicago Bulls during the Jordan era. He moved on and has been the voice of the Green Bay Packers for many, many years. Lots to talk about with Wayne Larrivee coming up today. That'll be in about 12 minutes. And then at 11:30, we are going to talk with Justin Rogers from the Detroit Free Press up in Detroit, Michigan. He covers the Lions, your team, Casey McAllister.
That's my
Your
guys.
Detroit Lions.
Dan Campbell.
So we got, that's right, Dan Campbell. Chris Spielman. All right, Ham and Eggers, take it away.
It's that time of the show, the Ham and Eggers. These guys are great, trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
All right, Tom talked about the Bengals, and that is what we'll be talking about a little bit with the Bengals today. players reported today. Bengals Report is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data center world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing models to improve efficiency and
productivity.
I thought I could do the whole thing. Visit Encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here. There's also a new premium alkaline water out. I don't have it in front of me because I just put it in the refrigerator to get it in between off the bench and box lunch. Wanted it chilled today. Usually we get it. It's room temperature. I was like, you know what? I want a cold Pawnee water today. Threw it in the fridge. We'll get it in a few minutes. And by a few minutes, I mean an hour and 10 minutes. Yeah. But it does taste good. In fact, it tastes great. And it's made right here in Hamilton, Ohio. It uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that many other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water that is also the best tasting water in the world. Visit their website at pawneewater.com. Check this out. Here, put it in front of the camera. I'll put it right here.
That's what they send you.
Hold on. Let me make sure. Let me get this whole thing set up here. Make sure I can see it. There we go.
Send you a little
Pawnee Water.
Pawnee Water.
Visit pawneewater.com. That is PAHHNI water.com. PAHHNI water.com to see where you can buy this great tasting water. Drink Pawnee Water. Get your coffee from UDF. Bet with Betfred and get your technology solutions from Encore.tech. I had something I was just about to say, and now I cannot remember what I was going to say.
Pub the podcast.
Podcast? Yes. Hey, if you are not yet subscribed to any of our podcasts here, make sure you go and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you can find your podcast. Off the Bench is available, but also every other podcast that we do. Chatterbox Reds is available there. Box Lunch. We need more subscribers to Box Lunch in podcast form because that's one of the best shows that we do here, and Reed puts a lot of time, effort, and energy into that. So make sure you go subscribe to Box Lunch. Not Too Picky is on there. The Rebound Rundown is on there. The Mental Game is on there. All the podcasts are in the channels that you can find. Leave ratings and reviews. You can do all that. Make sure you go like and subscribe to the channel, too. We see 18 likes in here. We had over 1,000 likes for the Oklahoma stream.
Yes.
Over 1,000.
I mean,
what was it, 16,000? So I turned on the Oklahoma stream in between the doubleheader at Xavier on Saturday, and I watched it for a long time. Went back and watched most of it later, and 16,000 concurrent viewers. 18,000. They brought it. Oklahoma brought it.
Hey, when you're back-to-back national champs, is that right?
Yep.
Well, when you're back-to-back national champs, you're going to bring it.
Oh, yeah.
It's an exciting sport to watch when it's played well.
It is.
I mean, it's a really exciting game. And especially once they get to the tournament. By the way, how did your Xavier Musketeers do against UConn over the weekend? They went in with, I'm not mistaken, a 13-game winning streak?
11-game winning streak.
11-game winning streak.
Yeah, it was a weird. It was kind of a weird weekend because they went 1-2, but they had the lead in both of the losses. They were winning 9-7 with one out in the ninth inning.
Oh boy, that hurts.
And gave up two-run home runs and lost by 2. So, yeah, Hayden Field's one of the smallest parks in the country. So you get a line drive to left field that would be a 310-foot line out anywhere else, and it's getting out. So, but yeah, it was an exciting weekend of play around the diamond all over the tri-state area.
Brian wants to know if Oklahoma, much like the days of Baker Mayfield, did they plant the flag in the middle of Miami's softball stadium?
No, they actually did something much, much more respectable. And
really? What'd they do?
They took their team and Miami and Louisville as well, and I think they all got around the pitcher's mound and did a little prayer. And
very nice.
Very respectable.
So that's what you get from the heartland of America, not from the liberal elites like Paul on the coast, on the East Coast and the West Coast. See, in the heartland of America like Oklahoma, Ohio, Kentucky, flyover.
How did I find
for
myself?
The elites?
How did I find myself backed into this corner?
It's an easy target. I mean, truth be told, right? Hey, basketball over the weekend, and we'll have time to talk about it later. Any impressions from either one of you guys about the opening round of the NBA, opening games, technically, of the NBA playoffs? They continue tonight. Any impressions? Anything stand out?
Yeah, Austin Reeves had a great game
yes,
for LA.
Yes, he did.
Austin Reeves, yeah, he played really – a former Oklahoma player. I watched Austin Reeves and Brady Manick play for Oklahoma at Cintas. They played Xavier during the COVID year, and it was when the arena was empty. I'll never forget it because it was one of the best offensive performances Xavier has ever put up, and there was nobody there to see it, and it was bizarre. It was the empty arena. Xavier scored almost 100 points that game. I think made 15 threes or something crazy in that one. Anyway, yeah, Reeves had a great game. LA, LeBron. It's good to see. I like seeing LeBron succeed like that. And then I'm trying to think, Chris Paul and the Suns, man, Russell Westbrook. How about that? Did you see that last night?
Yeah, I mean, my son pointed out to me when the trade happened, because we were out in Arizona, and he said to me, he says, Dad, he says, and I don't pay much attention to it during the regular season. He says, listen, he says, they traded away some really good players on this deal to get Durant.
Yeah.
And they said, and he made the comment to me, and we were talking about it again this morning. He said, go look up the plus-minus numbers of that Phoenix bench in the game last night. They did not have one player that came off their bench that was in the plus column.
Oof.
And that's where LA got him, the Clippers.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be honest, I didn't watch. I stayed up last night to the end of the Nuggets game just in case anything big happened. But I didn't watch every minute of it. I just stayed up just in case anything was going to happen to talk about. But it was a Nuggets blowout win. Nuggets are going to roll, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Nuggets. I mean, I guess that's just what we're doing here. Nuggets are going to roll.
But what about Milwaukee?
Yeah, Giannis being hurt.
Get the charge out of basketball. Get the charge out of basketball. John Morant, Giannis, both hurt on the charge. It is the lamest thing you can do in sports. Actually trying is take a freaking charge in basketball.
Why is that lame?
I hate it. Because it's just showing that you don't know how to defend. All you do is slide in front, stick your hands down in front of your private parts, and slide over and fall down, and you get rewarded for it instead of actually trying to play competitive defense. I hate it. And I know you can't actually get it out of the sport because there has to be an element of offensive penalty. So you can't get it, you can't completely remove it, but there has to be a way that they can change the charge call that you don't just slide. It's worse. It's much, much worse in college than it is in the NBA.
Yes.
Much worse.
Yes.
Doesn't happen nearly as often in the NBA.
No, because who's getting in front of LeBron?
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns had that one back in the play-in game. It just doesn't. It's just so. I hate it. I've hated it for years. It was funny. About 2 or 3 college basketball seasons ago, I tweeted about it so much that somebody texted me and goes, I appreciate what you're doing, but you got to give it up on the charge thing because that's all you're doing is tweeting about it. I haven't tweeted about it in the last couple of years because I realized I felt like I was bogging myself down in negativity about the charge, and I realized it was a losing cause, so I gave it up.
See, Paul, you can't wilt to the pressure.
Well,
I was the one lone voice in the wilderness that took a beating from fans like you and everybody else about baseball and the pace and the slow, and the game was dying, and it was boring to watch. And people killed me for it.
Oh, I'll still fight the good fight, but I just don't.
You got to fight it.
I just don't need to tweet about it every single time there's a charge.
Big League Paul, don't back down, says Nick Kirby.
Oh, I'm not backing down. I just don't need to clog everybody's feed because I was literally tweeting about it almost every charge where I would watch in college basketball. And then I realized after the whole season of doing it that I was tweeting it 2 to 3 times a night. And I got to stop doing this. I don't want this to be my identity. There's more to my life than the charge. But, yeah, no, it's terrible. Something just needs to be fundamentally fixed with it because I think in general you have to have an element where an offensive player is penalized for playing out of control and running through a defensive player, but just sliding over and not playing, not giving any effort defensively and just trying to slide in front, fall down, and get rewarded for it. And then the referees don't know how to adjudicate it, and they'll reward a flop, whatever. Oh, we have more important things to cover on this show right now than to let me go on and on for an hour, because I could do an hour on the Charge if you wanted to. I could do a whole show on it, but Wayne is in here, and we
will.
Yeah.
Perhaps we will.
Yeah.
I Like Bacon wants to know, Casey, has anyone been banned from the chat yet today? You sent our show, our building show, right to the tank one day last week. All right. One of my favorite guys, and I mean, if you want to listen to a guy do play-by-play, you could put this on a shelf and put it on your TV, on your radio, whatever, and there's no finer play-by-play announcer over the last 30 years in multiple sports than Wayne Larrivee, who now, after being associated, if you will, in Chicago sports for a long time, the Bulls and the Cubs and the Bears, he's a Packer guy now for a long time. Wayne Larrivee, how are you, my man? You never age a day.
That's not true, and you know it. And by the way, I never looked good young, so what am I going to do now?
Oh, you've always
by the way,
looked
who
great.
Were you talking about when you were leading into me? I don't reflect that individual.
Yes, you do, Wayne. Yes, you do. I mean, to listen to you do games, and that's coming from a guy who did play-by-play to another. I mean, your calls are just off the charts every single event you do, whether it was Big Ten Network, going way back to your early start in Texas, I think it was. You were down there, then get the Kansas City Chiefs job, and then on to Chicago from there where you did it all, and now with the Packers. Wayne, look, it just seems like, and for you it's got to be a lot worse than it is for us here in Cincinnati because we don't follow it all the time, but we find ourselves talking about it all the time. Where does this whole Aaron Rodgers thing, where is it? Where is it going? Does anybody know?
I don't know if anybody knows for sure, Tommy, but, it's got to be heading to a deal with the New York Jets. You just think my one theory that was advanced to me, and that it kind of makes sense, is that we may not know anything until draft night because the two teams probably have a deal already done, but it's contingent on how the first round of the draft unfolds. And I'm talking about maybe the first 10 to 12 picks, because the Packers would like to move up to that number 13 pick and, flip picks with the Jets. Go from 15 to 13. The Jets fall back to number 15. Now, what I think is contingent upon that is the right offensive lineman or lineman still being available, because that's what the Jets need with their number one pick. They need an offensive tackle. And if one of those guys starts slipping, which certainly could happen, then maybe the Jets are comfortable saying, hey, we can get our guy at number 15. So we'll flip picks with the Packers, and maybe we throw a third or a second round in there. Maybe there's no conditional pick the following year, and we get this Rodgers deal done right away. So it's kind of complex because of the Rodgers contract, but I do think the Packers would like to flip picks. They'd like to get a second-round pick in this draft and see where it goes from there.
It seems, Wayne, and that there are just so many, twists and turns to this whole thing. I mean, even just recently where all of a sudden I know that Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, has all of a sudden let people know we're not giving up a first-round pick because, Rodgers then starts to kind of hint about retirement again. It just seems like he's playing chess with a couple of different organizations and a whole lot of people here in this operation. Is that fair to say, or is that unfair to say?
Well, it depends on who's playing chess. I mean, I think Aaron's kind of sitting there. Woody Johnson is the guy. Now, again, Tom, we're in the lying season in the NFL. This is when it's legal to lie to everybody if you're an NFL team or an NFL person. So we're in the lying season. Now, the latest, this came out last week, the Woody Johnson is kind of pushing back on what the Jets were offering to get this deal done. And it's incumbent upon them to get this deal done and get Rodgers into camp and get him into the offseason program, because he's got he's all new people to work with for the most part. Now, Woody Johnson apparently has cold feet. Woody Johnson is the guy who basically is the guy who got behind this thing and generated this whole deal in the first place. It didn't come from the general manager, didn't come from the head coach, but Woody Johnson is the guy who and he led the brigade of people, went out to California to visit in person with Rodgers, that type of thing. So I find it hard to believe that Woody Johnson is pushing back on this deal. Do they want to give up a number one draft choice? Not this year. Would they give up a conditional number one draft choice next year? That might be what the Packers are holding out for.
All right, let's talk about the team and assume for a second. Well, before I do that, do you envision any scenario? Because right now he's still under contract with the Green Bay Packers. But do you envision any scenario that could have something positive about it, or just any scenario in general where where Rodgers is back with the Packers this year?
Wow. Well, Mark Murphy said it himself. He's the president, CEO and president of the team. He said, hey, listen, if we don't get what we want, I mean, it's possible Rodgers could come back. But, you know, part of how we got here, Tom, is that, you know, if you bring back Aaron Rodgers, you're essentially running back what you had last year. Because with Rodgers comes basically Randall Cobb. You're keeping the veteran at tight end, Mercedes Lewis. You probably would have re-signed Alan Lazard, that kind of thing. The Packers don't want to run back last year. You don't run back 8 and 9. You run back 13 and 4. You try to run that back, but you don't run back 8 and 9. And that's part of where the Packers were. And if you go back to where this all began, after the season, I think the Packers were fine with Aaron Rodgers being their quarterback. They wanted him to be their quarterback, but they knew that they were going to have to restructure offensively, and that they weren't going to bring back Cobb and Lewis and Lazard. They weren't going to bring those guys back. And as Aaron looked at that, he says, well, then you're rebuilding. And he doesn't want any part at this stage of his career in a rebuild. So that's kind of how they got to where they're at. But right now, I don't see a scenario whereby Rodgers comes back into this camp with Jordan Love being basically announced as the starting quarterback.
I don't think anybody at this point in time can make any kind of definitive sort of declaration about what kind of quarterback Jordan Love will be or won't be. But clearly the Packers, this is a year they need to find out what this guy is capable or not capable of. What's kind of the vibe about him around the camp? He's never been the guy, obviously, with Rodgers still there. But what's the feeling about him as a player and a leader?
Tommy, you are so right. Number one, nobody knows what this guy is going to be like at quarterback. He has come in, and I'll tell you this. He's come in with all this noise around him for 3 years, all right? He has lockered 2 doors down from Aaron Rodgers, 1 locker between the 2 of them, okay? He has stood there every day. He's talked with the media when the media's wanted to talk with him. He has made progress. He came in, his first year was a typical redshirt year for a player. He came in with COVID. The training camp was reduced to about 3 or 4 weeks. Nobody had any chance. There were no games in the preseason that year. They had to get 2 quarterbacks ready for the regular season. He was not one of them. He did not dress for a single game his rookie year. His rookie year actually was the following season. And he started to make some progress. It was incremental progress. Didn't look good on the surface at first. Started a game at Kansas City, got the crap blitzed out of him in that game, struggled somewhat, but kept his poise and led the Packers to a late touchdown in Kansas City and made a game of it against the Chiefs, a game they eventually lost. Then last year, again, preseason games seemed to make some progress, but that's not the barometer you're looking for to judge a quarterback. Came in against Philadelphia in a mop-up role, basically, after Rodgers went out with an injury, played the 4th quarter, looked very sharp at Philadelphia. That's what everybody's banking on. So there's a lot of positive feel for Jordan Love because, Tom, he has worked at it. He knows the offense. He's done everything he can. Brian Gutekunst said, we don't need to see anything more. And what he meant by that was that it's not that he's confident this guy is going to be the next franchise quarterback. He's saying, We've seen all we need to see of this guy in preseason games, in practices, running the scout team for whatever that means, if on a mop-up role or filling in occasionally in a regular season game. We've seen all of that. What you don't know on a quarterback on this level in this game is once you hand the keys to that guy, he's got to drive off the lot, okay? And then you start finding out week after week as defenses are scheming to stop him. Then you start finding out, do you have a quarterback who can play in this league? Because you don't know until that happens, and it will take 6 to 8 weeks or more to figure that out.
But, Wayne, you've forgotten more football than I know, but you and I both know, and you don't have to be some football savant to figure this out. Frequently, you're only as good, right, as those guys that are around you. And much has been made about, the receiving core or the lack thereof when Rodgers has been here since Adams walked out the door during last season. You mentioned they go 8-9. Although Rodgers did not look as sharp as he's looked in the past last year, I didn't think. He had some games where he did, but others he did not. But, do you think they'll get a fair evaluation of Love, knowing that they might be, as a franchise, if Love is a starter, that would tell you they are in rebuild mode, right? Okay, so this is what we're going to do and where we are moving forward. Are you going to be able to get a good feel for what he's capable of doing or not doing based on those that are around him?
That's a great point, Tom, and you're exactly right. Will he have enough around him initially? Let's go back to last year. It was the first time in my 24 going on 25 years in Green Bay, the Packers did not have a bona fide number one receiver. First time. Aaron Rodgers played with a couple of rookies out there. He played with Randall Cobb, who's still an effective slot receiver, but not the player he was 10 years ago, obviously, who is. And Alan Lazard. Alan Lazard is being paid like the Jets as a number 2 receiver. On a good receiving core, Alan Lazard is a 3. On a real good receiving core, he's a 4. You understand? He was the Packers' lead receiver last year. So you get an idea of the way it went. They never overcame the loss of Davante Adams, and Adams just didn't want to sign with the Packers. They offered him more money than the Raiders. He wanted to go to the Raiders. That's what he did. They worked out a deal. But they never overcame that, and where we saw evidence of that was especially in the red zone where the Packers were dreadful. I believe they were 28th or 29th in the league in red zone touchdown production. So what do we have now? There's no Alan Lazard. There's no Robert Tonyan at tight end. The Packers have a couple of promising second-year players, actually 3 second-year wide receivers. They're going to have to get a veteran somewhere along the line, I think, into that receiver room. Maybe it's Randall Cobb if he doesn't sign with the Jets. I don't know. But somebody, and now they've got to get tight end. And they have to get a tight end early in this draft, maybe as early as their first pick in the first round. So that's where they're at with Jordan Love. He has a good offensive line behind him, and he has an excellent running game, 2 excellent running backs. The thing we're curious to see with Jordan, he has escapability. He has athletic ability. He has a big arm. All those things that made him a first-round draft choice, he has all of that. And I think the mobility he brings to the position will open some eyes because in recent years, Aaron Rodgers could still move. He could still evade the rush, but his athleticism, his ability to run wasn't quite as prominent. Jordan Love has more of that at this stage in his career. So we're anxious to see how that works out. But the receiving core, is it one of the top receiving cores in the league? In all honesty, probably not.
I'm kind of curious because you've seen the game evolve over your 35-plus years broadcasting in the NFL. Heck, it might. Are you up to 40 yet? I'm being serious about it. Have you done NFL games for now for almost 40 years?
I think it's around 45, 46, somewhere in that area.
I sold you short. Unbelievable.
It started in 78.
Well, I want to ask you this because, and maybe you won't have the answer. Maybe it's an unfair question. When you talk about the Rodgers thing and he got his huge contract prior to last year, here in Cincinnati, everybody talking about Joe Burrow getting a huge deal. And it's interesting because as you and I are sitting here chatting right now, the news just broke about Jalen Hurts becoming the highest paid player in NFL history today, getting $225 million on a 5-year deal from Philly. More on that later. What I'm getting at is, you mentioned the Packers tried to sign Adams. Okay, he had made the decision he wanted to go to the Raiders. That's where he ended up going. They had already paid Rodgers. Around here in Cincinnati, a lot of people are sitting here wondering, something's got to give, because you've got Burrow, whose deal is up. You got T. Higgins, who, though you've got some control over him, he's in line for a big money deal. Jamar Chase, a year behind him, a big money deal. Can you pay 3 guys, the quarterback over $40 million, 2 receivers anywhere from $20 to $30 million over the long haul, and still have a good team around them?
Well, the Bengals, and by the way, their general manager, Duke Tobin, has done a great job. They're in salary cap. They're in a precarious salary cap position going forward for this reason. They've done such a good job at drafting that now it comes time to pay those players. And the Packers have been in that situation. They made David Bakhtiari the highest paid offensive lineman in the history of the game. Aaron Rodgers, highest paid quarterback, history of the game. Jair Alexander, highest paid cornerback, history of the game. And all these guys are highest paid. And Tom, at some point, that squeezes your salary cap. And, that's what I think is going to be happening in the next few years in Cincinnati. They've done a great job of putting talent together. Duke Tobin, by the way, when we were in Chicago, Bill Tobin, his dad, was the architect of the Bears and one of the people behind the '85 Bears and putting that team together, one of the greatest teams in the history of the game. So, to see Duke do this well is great. But, the salary cap and free agency kind of levels the playing field. The salary cap, and that you can't keep everybody. But where you get into trouble with the salary cap, where most teams get in trouble, is they indulge in free agency year after year, and then they have no more room to pay guys. Well, the flip side of that is the Pittsburghs and the Green Bays and now the Cincinnatis doing such a great job of drafting, and they want to keep these guys, but you can't keep everybody. So it's going to be perplexing to see what happens with that Cincinnati team that I thought got screwed out of that Super Bowl with that goal line call on the inside linebacker against the Rams. That was egregious.
Yeah. Well, they're hoping. It's been back-to-back AFC championship games around here and 1 Super Bowl, so we'll find out if they've got it. They certainly have some decisions to make. They're not on the clock quite yet, but they're knocking on that door. When you look, last question for you, Wayno, you know so much about the Bears. You know everybody in the division. We're going to be talking about the Lions a little bit later on. When you look at the division for next year, for this upcoming season, and Cousins is going to be still in Minnesota. How do you handicap that? Because it's a division that Green Bay has owned forever, and it doesn't look like they're going to own it for the immediate future. How do you see that division moving forward?
Well, it's interesting. Those of us watching it closely last year, by the end of the season, the best team in that division was Detroit.
Yeah.
I mean, they trounced Minnesota in the final month of the season. They trounced the Vikings. And then they came out and beat the Packers when all the Packers had to do was win the game at Lambeau Field on a Sunday night, and they're in the playoffs. And the Lions had nothing to play for and still won the game. So let's start there. The Lions are the best team in the division at the moment, based on where they finished last year. They didn't have the best record. Minnesota made the playoffs. Minnesota wasn't the best team in that division last year. Matter of fact, the Packers trounced Minnesota on New Year's Day in Green Bay. So I look at the Lions right now. They've got a good young base they're putting together. It looks to me like it's a sustainable base. A lot will depend on how well Jared Goff plays going forward, but he was outstanding last year. The Vikings under Kirk Cousins, it's interesting, Tom, because they're reloading. They're trying to rebuild that defense, and it looks like they're going to have to do a certain amount of rebuilding on offense, too. Dalvin Cook probably won't be back at running back. You've got the Packers in their situation. The big problem last year, the big disappointment last year wasn't so much the way the offense played, Tom. They expected that defense to be a solid top 10, maybe top 5 defense, and it was anything but. 17th in points allowed, 17th in yardage allowed, 28th in yards per rushing attempt. It wasn't good enough based on the struggles they had offensively. And then you've got Chicago. Good young team building. made an interesting deal trading away the number one draft choice. Now they got a number one this year, obviously, but the key to that deal was number one next year. Why? Well, because they aren't sure that their quarterback is the real deal, and they're going to take one more year to find out. And if he isn't, the quarterback class next year is much better than this year's, and the Bears will have 2 first-round draft choices to move up and down the board to get their quarterback next year if Justin Fields isn't the real deal based on what happens this coming season.
What do you think of Fields?
I think he's a great talent, Tom. I mean, his running ability is without question. He has all the tools you look for in today's quarterback. Dual threat quarterback, big arm, makes all the throws. Here's what we don't know about him, and here's what they don't know about him. Is he a guy who has the innate quick twitch mentally that separates the great quarterbacks from the good to average quarterbacks? Can he read the defense at the snap of the ball? And that's what they don't know about yet. And as my friend Hub Arkish said, boy, the fact they don't know that yet, he's been around now for a few years, the fact they don't know that yet is probably one of the reasons why they insisted on getting an extra first-round draft choice for next year.
Wayne Larrivee, it's been a pleasure, my friend. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us here on the program. And, man, we're always rooting for you and always listening for you.
Hey, Tommy, thank you so much. You know, some of the most fun I have ever had in broadcasting, I want to just tell the folks this for a minute, was when you and Santo and Stoney and I used to go out and play golf. We were doing Cubs baseball over those years, and we used to go out on the road on early in the morning before a night game, and the banter with Santo and Stoney and you, I've never laughed that hard in my life. You were a delight. You're a tremendous talent as a play-by-play guy, and a delight to be around, and really enjoyed it, Tom, and so glad we were able to connect, and let's keep in touch because, you know, you're just one of the special people in this business.
Well, Wayno, you're very kind to say so, my man. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch up sometime soon, I hope, buddy.
Please do. Thank you,
buddy.
Tom.
Wayne Larrivee, kind enough to join us. That guy knows his stuff right there. You guys ever really listen to him do a football game before?
I'm not, but I want to now.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the guy, he is – and I just say I don't want to shortchange him because when he was doing the Bulls games in basketball, I mean, this guy is a phenomenal broadcaster. Does a lot of Westwood One stuff and so on and so forth. If I was running whoever has the rights to the NFL, Westwood One or whoever it is, when they get into the playoffs, that's a guy I'd be hiring. If I had to, I mean, you talk about a radio play-by-play guy, you feel like you are sitting right there. That's the guy. He is unbelievable. All right, how about this? Jalen Hurts news?
Yeah, that's a big deal.
This is a huge deal. $255 million on a 5-year contract that makes him the highest paid player in NFL history. It includes nearly $180 million guaranteed.
Yeah, that Lamar Jackson contract, that's the first thing I thought of. It makes it look like Lamar had a pretty good evaluation of himself. If you want to look at it in a way of Jalen Hurts is an MVP. He wasn't an MVP guy.
Well, he would have been if he didn't get hurt.
Hurts?
This year.
Oh, okay.
He would have been very much in the middle of that conversation if he didn't miss 4 or 5 games at the end of the year.
Well, regardless, I'm just saying that I think what Lamar was asking is not totally out of the realm of possibility of, that's the market. That's just what it is. That's the first thing I thought of. Then the second thing I thought of was the guys that we haven't really – I mean, we've talked about Joe Burrow, but the Justin Herberts of the world and every other quarterback in the future going forward, it's going to be, at least for Burrow, I expect it to be more than this. I really do. And I think the Bengals will make him the highest paid player in the NFL. The guarantees were at 180. I don't know what the Bengals will do, but I expect it to be probably at 200 million guaranteed at this point, which is almost in that same realm of, I mean, it's what's crazy to me is that Deshaun Watson had 250 million guaranteed, right? Or 240, 230, something like that. We're looking at still a $50 million difference. That's the other thing that I thought of too, was just how crazy that contract was. But yeah, this is a big deal for all the quarterbacks right now in the NFL. I think this is it's the framework for Joe Burrow's contract. Hopefully this didn't just blow up any negotiations that were happening behind the scenes. Your thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, nothing more than what you just said. I think the MVP conversation this year probably spurred this one on a little bit more, and now you're going to start to see. I think my only thought would be, and it's not really even a thought, it's more of a question, is how does this impact Burrow? And if they were, like you said, Casey, down the line at all with a Burrow deal, does this have them does this give them any pause that they have to go back, talk about anything? Maybe they're not. I would love to know where they are in that conversation. I'd just love to know where the Bengals are.
It's a good question. It's a very good question. You know, you look at some of the numbers and look. 2019, when Lamar Jackson won the MVP, I mean, look, on a calendar, 2019 is not all that long ago. But 2019 seems like a long time ago when it comes to Jackson being the MVP. Because the following year, he leads his team, starts 15 of the 16, and they go 11-4. Well, since then, he has started 12 in each of the last 2 years. Jalen Hurts, they went to a 17-game schedule. Each of the last two, he started 15 games, right? Takes care of the ball. Let's shift gears. You heard Wayne Larrivee a moment ago talking about he felt without a doubt at the end of last season the Detroit Lions were the best team without question in the NFC North. They went into that last game playing at Green Bay. Everybody was hoping it would mean a winner-take-all kind of thing. Didn't play out that way. It was for Green Bay. The Lions beat them up. Justin Rogers has been covering the team for a long, long time up in Detroit. Justin, how are you, young man? Everything well with you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's get right to it. We like to ask the questions, you know, where you been, where are you now, where are you going? Last season, so much to talk about with this Detroit team. What are the things that stand out to you about the season the Lions had last year?
Well, I think it starts with the offense, right? You go from 2021, where I was standing in training camp talking to another reporter, and I said, this might be the worst offense in the NFL, and really wasn't a whole lot better than that. They make some modest changes, I think, to the group, but the biggest one being the offensive coordinator, bringing in Ben Johnson or promoting Ben Johnson from within, and the thing really took off, and they went from one of the worst offenses in the NFL to one of the best. Turned Jared Goff into the Pro Bowl caliber quarterback he was in Los Angeles in 2017, 2018. Continued to maximize the talents he did have on the roster, and I think lead to continued optimism with that group going into this upcoming season.
They have the big run near the end of the year. I have always said, I'm not sure at the end of the day there is a better fan base. When you consider this franchise has not won a playoff game, not one, going all the way back to 1999. And yet the crowds that show up, great stadium, phenomenal fan base. Cynical, of course. Why wouldn't you be? But what has Dan Campbell done, besides them playing well and winning some games, but just his personality and that kind of thing? He seems like he's just, you know, really given a shot in the arm to all Lions fans. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, you know, he comes in with the introductory press conference, the kneecap biting that garnered a lot of national attention, and that was a 20-30 second clip from what was an hour-long press conference where he brought a consistently high level of energy. But I think the thing that really stands out about Dan Campbell is his genuineness. There's no pretense about this guy. There's nothing fake about what he's presenting, what you saw on Hard Knocks, what you saw in that press conference. He's a little dorky, a little bit of I guess he presents himself like a meathead, but he's honest, he's caring, he's straightforward with his guys, and he brings a unmistakable passion that makes guys want to rally to be around him. I think the other thing that's unique about Dan Campbell is we talk a little bit about the Lions and their history and their failures, and most people that come in here acknowledge that the history exists, but they don't embrace it because they don't feel obligated to. It's not their problems. The Lions lost for the 5 or 6 decades before they got here, and fans don't always want to hear that. They want somebody to feel their pain, whether they were there or not. They want that empathetic quality. And Campbell, having played here, 15 years before he signed on as a coach, but he has this sense, that empathy for what the fans feel, and he's embraced the Lions' negative history and used it as a motivational tactic. The players on this roster know how long it's been since the franchise has won a division. They know how long it's been since the franchise has won a playoff game. There are signs up in the building that kind of acknowledge some of that stuff. And I think it's been a positive that he's used the negative history as motivation for the present.
All right, I want to talk about two guys higher up the food chain than Dan Campbell. I've known Chris Spielman for a long time. He was my broadcast partner with Fox for a long time. You get that grin on your face. I mean, you start talking about Chris Spielman. I mean, hey, look, you knew him as a player and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Look, he may not be directly responsible for all of the good things that are going on, but you talk about a guy that understands that history of the Lions, because he was a great player right in the middle of all of it. And when the owner brings him in to sort of start, helping decide who's going to be the coach, helping decide who's going to be the general manager, does Spielman get any credit for this whole kind of thing? Because he was brought in before those other guys were brought in.
Yeah, you know Chris obviously very well, and he's not shy. He's never been shy, but in this current role, he's very much made sure that he's a background figure. He doesn't want the glamour or the praise. He's just trying to do the job of a humble servant, as he puts it, behind the scenes. And was really grateful he gave me the chance to sit down with him a little bit before the combine there in February, and we talked for an hour, and I just kind of caught up on his role. But I think it was a hire that was met with a healthy mix of excitement because of his history with the franchise, the fan favorite that he was, and also skepticism because, for all of his experiences, whether as a player or a broadcaster, it's a different role leading a franchise. And I think we've seen plenty of failed examples, including one in this town, from the broadcast booth to GM that failed miserably. So there's no guarantee in that working. But I think ownership deserves some credit in targeting Spielman and bringing him in to serve as kind of a cultural liaison, somebody that could set a tone culturally within the organization across all levels of the organization. And his vast depth of knowledge that he gained from just talking to all the people in football that you guys do before every broadcast every week, and building this depth of knowledge of what successful organizations have, finding ways to apply that in the interview process that brought Dan Campbell and general manager Brad Holmes here. I think, Spielman does deserve a lot of credit. Again, credit goes to ownership for identifying him, but to bring in that voice, that football voice that could bridge a gap that maybe they didn't have, it has looked and proven to be a very smart hire.
Okay, then there's Brad Holmes. I'm not sure. You would know better than I do. I'm not so sure how many people looked at him as being a guy that was ready to take on this kind of job. And you mentioned the culture and, is it the chicken or the egg about the whole thing and creating an environment that leads to winning, or does winning create the environment? Holmes has done an incredible job there, and he has not been shy at all about making moves, leading right up just recently to last week, trading away Jeff Okuda.
Yeah, I think Holmes came in. I'll admit right now, when I started doing the initial research of candidates when the previous regime was broomed out, Holmes wasn't on my radar. He fit the qualifications, right? He was a top level guy with a organization that had lots of success, and that's what you look for. But he was probably one that just missed the cut. But what he's done really well was his strength coming into this job. He was a college scouting director for the Rams, and I think we know the Rams' propensity for dealing draft picks. So he, sometimes maybe didn't have the best assets in the draft to work with, but had a pretty good and lengthy history with that organization, with helping find talent at all levels of the draft, and that has continued here in Detroit. He's done very well in his first two drafts, and when you're tearing a franchise down to its foundation, to its studs, and rebuilding it up from scratch, that's where you need to have success. They were very conservative in free agency these 2 years. They didn't want to tie up a lot of their money. It was a lot of one-year deals on high risk, maybe semi-high ceiling players, a lot of prove-it deals. But really, the heart of this whole operation has been the draft, and Holmes has done very well. No GM hits on every pick; they don't. But his success rate there, if you were grading it, you could easily say he deserves an A. And so, now the Lions are moving on to this next stage of their rebuild, and they're actually starting to spend some money in free agency. The big deal being Cam Sutton, the cornerback from Pittsburgh. They're spending a little bit more freely. They've got still a good amount of draft assets stemming still from that Matthew Stafford trade when Holmes first took the job. And I guess we see where it goes from here when he's asked to do a little bit wider, the aspects of the job when you expand the responsibilities beyond the draft and player acquisition to free agency. If he can hit there as well, the franchise is only going to continue to trend upward.
Well, look, they struggled in the secondary last year. That's no secret. Right now, they basically have overhauled that whole thing back there, including moving Okuda, just trading him for what? It was a fifth-round pick, I think it was. So now all of a sudden, there's reason for optimism if guys come in and play like the back of their quote-unquote bubblegum cards say, okay, Gardner Johnson's been brought in there. Going into the draft, well, before we get to the draft, you touched on Goff for a minute. I mean, look, this is a guy who, he number one pick in the draft, Rams, whole 9 yards, gets them rolling, blah, blah, blah. They make the deal. The second he walks out the door, Stafford goes out to the Rams. He wins the Super Bowl. Goff comes in. A lot like his career, he's kind of up and down. Do you think that ultimately, or will it depend on his play this year, whether or not they buy into him being the long-term guy? Because he's still a relatively young guy.
28 years old. And so I think the fact that Brad Holmes was heavily involved in scouting Jared Goff, in advising their general manager at the time to trade up to draft Jared Goff, there is a heavy amount of belief that was there before Goff even arrived in the building. It was not seen as a throw-in to the acquisition or the trade with Matthew Stafford. It was not seen ever as a bridge quarterback. I think they genuinely hoped and believed that Jared Goff would snatch the reins as the leader of this franchise and, again, show that Pro Bowl level skill set that he showed early in his career with the Rams. And last year was a struggle, or not last year, but 2 years ago was a struggle, and there were plenty of reasons for that. Again, they tore it down to the studs. They didn't give Goff a whole lot to work with. The offensive line was dealing with multiple injuries that year. Disaster all the way around. Last year, they got the fruits from that trade that they had hoped. Goff had maybe some holes in his resume or skill set that you could point out in terms of how he deals with pressure, or maybe his subpar deep ball. And both of those, I thought he acquitted himself very well last year, and no more so than the 329 consecutive passes he ended the season with without interception. So it's always a year-to-year business, especially when a massive contract extension is coming up due here shortly. But I do believe this franchise and Brad Holmes believe in Jared Goff, and I think he's plan A for their future still.
David Montgomery is a young man, grew up just right down the road here in Cincinnati. Williams was a guy last year in Detroit. What was it that prompted basically Williams going out and Montgomery coming in?
It's strictly the willingness to not be emotionally attached and being prepared to upgrade at any spot at any given time. Jamal Williams was outstanding here for what he was signed to do, culturally, on the field production, locker room leader. He checked every box that was expected of him. And last year, I think, given he had to shoulder a bigger load with DeAndre Swift banged up, as he's been much of his career, exceeded those bars in so many ways. And but at the end of the day, there are still, as with every NFL player, there are just limitations in what he can do. And I know Jamal Williams uses interview segments like this and the words that I'm saying as motivation, and I think that's fine. But this is still a guy that has averaged around 4 yards per carry during his career. Not a ton of explosive plays, not a lot of missed tackles, not huge contributions in the pass game. He's that north-south durable workhorse, and there will always, always, always be value for guys in the league that have that skill set, and even more so with guys with Williams' character and leadership ability. But I think a lot of people get hung up on the 17 touchdowns, and 17 rushing touchdowns is remarkable, but it's a stat that's also often a matter of circumstance, right? And you look at the 17, I can't remember the exact number, but 12 or 14 of them came within 2 yards. And so now you're talking about, in baseball terms, RBI is when bases are loaded, right? You're seeing better pitches. It's easier to drive those guys in. It's a matter of circumstance. You still have to get the hit. You still have to run that 1 or 2 yards. But when you're set up to succeed like that and it meshes well with your skill set, it can overinflate a player's value. And Brad Holmes didn't see that. They set a price tag that they were willing to pay for Jamal Williams. They offered it. He didn't like it. They moved on to another player that was willing to accept a contract in that offer, and Dave Montgomery, and that's a better back. There's no question about it in my mind. You're talking about a guy that has broke or made as many tacklers miss as anybody since he's been in the NFL. He's a couple years younger. He contributes more in the pass game, and I found one stat that was really interesting is David Montgomery has played more snaps every single season than the maximum that Jamal Williams has played in a season. So he's also more durable, more reliable on a down-to-down basis. And again, going back to Swift, if Swift gets banged up again, as he has the first 3 years in his career, you can trust David Montgomery to fulfill more of the playbook. You don't have to condense your playbook now because of a different style runner. And I'm not saying that David Montgomery is as explosive as DeAndre Swift, but you know that he can contribute in the pass game in ways that Jamal Williams couldn't. So you are able to keep the playbook pretty much the same as it was pre or post Swift.
Last question. There have been a lot of stories written lately, people talking about the possibility of Detroit trading up here in the upcoming draft, which will be a week from this Thursday. A, are you buying that? And B, if they don't trade up, what would they be drafting? If they do trade up, what would that mean they're drafting?
I would have said last year I wouldn't have imagined the Lions trading up in the first round, and then Brad Holmes goes out and pulls a 20 move up the board deal to land Jameson Williams. So I'm not putting anything past them. They've done a really nice job of filling all their gaps and holes, obvious holes in free agency that they do have the flexibility to kind of go out and get the best player available and use their assets. But given what we talked about earlier, that I genuinely believe that Jared Goff is their guy. If you're not trading up for a quarterback, I don't know if that's great value to be moving up from 6 to 2 or 3, particularly since there is a market for those quarterbacks up there. So now you're competing with, a force that increases the value of those picks. We've seen some of those trades to move up. So, if you're thinking about moving up for a Will Anderson, it's just probably not the best use of your resources. So I expect the Lions to hang tight at 6. Certainly wouldn't be surprised if they move down if the right offer presents itself and one of those quarterbacks is there. But if they hang at 6, I think the two most likely options are they address either the defensive line or continue to address the secondary. I know they overhauled that unit this year. A lot of significant moves, a lot of significant additions, but the reality is Cam Sutton's the only one of consequence that's under contract beyond this year at the cornerback position. So they still have a long-term need there at cornerback. I think it's in play at 6 and 18, just depending on how they feel, what other players are available. Defensive linemen obviously are you can never have enough pass rush, right? And so if by some explicable reason Will Anderson drops, that's an option. I really like Wilson from Texas Tech at that spot as well.
All right. Justin Rogers, kind enough to join us from the Detroit News. We can't thank you enough for your time today, sir. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right. Justin Rogers, kind enough to join us. It's your team, Paul, the Lions. I mean, Casey, it's your team, the Lions.
Definitely not mine.
Yeah, I'm telling you, me and Trace were on the Lions early last season. Maybe I jumped the gun a little bit, but we could see the future, right? This team is just.
Ooh, I like that.
We saw what was to come with their draft capital, with the guys that they were bringing on, just the direction of the team itself. I mean, the what he said earlier about Jared Goff, that first year he was there, their offensive line being banged up. That was a big deal. That was a really big deal. And that, I think, was Penei Sewell's first year.
Yep.
And, last year you saw what that offensive line is capable of. It's a top 3 offensive line. It is devastating, especially in the run game. I agreed with his assessment about Jamal Williams, being that, he might have had a better season because of the talent around him and that offensive line being the way it was. Regardless, I really like their chances this year. They got 2 first-round picks, one at 6 and one at 18. And, man, if they were to get like Tyree Wilson or Will Anderson at 6, I mean, that would just be a steal. I expect them to get a corner, the best corner probably, the kid out of Oregon, or maybe the Deontay Banks maybe, or I mean, there's a lot of directions they could go regardless at 6 and 18. And I expect them to be even better than they were last year because that division is I think, significantly worse or they're going through rebuilds. So whatever the Lions' win total is right now, it's not high enough. That's how I feel about the Lions this year.
Well, I mean, come on now, Casey. I mean, you're not gonna. I mean, if it was put out there on Betfred Sports and it was a 13, you wouldn't bet that.
Well, it's not at 13.
Well, I know it's not, but you just said no win total is high enough.
Whatever it is right now, it's not high enough. I don't know if they moved it up to 12, I probably wouldn't take that. But
the Lions winning 12 games next year.
I mean,
let me take real quick because, you know, it's really interesting. I was doing this drill the other day of looking at teams because I don't pay any attention to it, you know, right now because the schedule gets released. I think it's the first week or second week of May, right? And it's interesting to look at some of the teams and who they're going to play, you know, because of, you know, what division they're playing and then based what teams – you know, so on and so forth. So I'm just trying to see we don't know that the opponents have been finalized.
Ooh,
so they have home games against, obviously, in their division. They have home and road games with the where did this just disappear on me? I mean, these websites, there's so many advertisements. Good Lord.
So they
Got to pay the bills somehow, Tom.
Well, I understand that. But, come on.
They have home games. Yeah.
Yeah, they got the Bears, Packers, Vikings, obviously, right? But then at home, I tell you, I'll take my chances against this home slate.
Yeah.
I mean, they got Atlanta, who you're all fired up about, Carolina, Denver. I do think Denver will be better, but it's Denver at home, the Raiders, and the Seahawks. So every one of those winnable games. Now, you start going on the road, a little bit different. They have to go to the Chiefs.
That's tough.
They have to go to the Chargers. They have to go to the Saints. The Buccaneers, 2 winnable games there. But they go on the road to the Ravens and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let me ask you this. I don't want to spend any more time on the Lions. We've talked about it for 20 minutes. When you brought up Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Now, every situation is different. Now, you had made the comment you think this kind of backs up the way he feels about, what he should be getting out there, okay? But the thing is that every team in the NFL right now has a chance to give him that kind of contract. He is on a non-exclusive franchise deal, which means every team in the league has a chance to make a contract offer now. You'd have to give up 2 first-round draft picks or try to negotiate something different out of that deal. But the bottom line is now, look, I don't have the inside information. There doesn't seem to be a team in the world out there interested in Lamar Jackson. And if you are the Baltimore Ravens, why in the world would you think about giving him a long-term deal right now? Based on injuries? Based on him not showing up at a playoff game just to cheer on his teammates? I mean, the Ravens have all the leverage in the world on this thing, and Lamar Jackson's a talented cat. There's no question about that. But every team now you cross off some because they don't need them. Bengals, Chargers, Eagles, Chiefs, blah, blah, blah. Every team has had a chance to go after and pursue Lamar Jackson. And it ain't happened.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a money issue, honestly. I really don't. I don't think it's the money issue. I think it's the trade. It's we got to give up 2 first-rounders for Lamar Jackson. Even Jim Irsay said it himself. It's more of a matter of it's not the money. It's the draft capital that you just don't want to give up. And teams that need a quarterback are really high up in the draft. And it's more value for the Ravens to get a trade done with a team that's in the top 10. That's just a matter of fact, right? And you're not wanting to give away a top 10 pick because you could get a very valuable player out of that deal. Maybe you would do it for 1 first-round pick in the top 10, but even so, I mean, it's hard to imagine. Even like the top 5 teams in the NFL, if they could trade away their top 5 pick for Lamar Jackson, I don't think they would do it because of how valuable that is. Now, I will say that there's still a chance that maybe they find some deal that they could find a team that could trade a first-round pick and maybe not a second first-round pick, but a second-round pick or a third-round pick and maybe throw in a player or something like that. I still believe that can happen. But the more and more this drags out, and with this new deal, I don't see a deal coming to fruition for Lamar, at least in Baltimore. That's not going to happen. Not for $180 million guaranteed.
Nope.
Certainly not that. And
definitely not.
He's already declined $130 million guaranteed, apparently. So I don't know. This is really it really looks like to me it's going to come down to a stalemate. I know you think that he won't sit out? I think he might. I think there's a 50% or more than 50% chance that
well,
he'll
if
sit
he
out.
does, he's an idiot. If he sits out, the guy's an idiot.
Well, what else does he have? What other choice does he have if he wants a better deal?
Well, listen, okay, you may not get $180 million guaranteed, but I know one thing. If his franchise tag calls for him to make somewhere around $35, $40 million this year,
Yep.
two things are for sure. One, if you sit out, you're walking away from $35 or $40 million. That's number one. Number two is, if you think your chances of getting a long-term deal for the kind of money you're looking for are bad right now, wait till you sit out a year. Le'Veon Bell is example A of a guy who did this, rolled the dice, and it could not have turned out worse. He was in a great situation in Pittsburgh, great offensive line, great player. He was the best running back in the NFL, all around, running it, catching it, maybe the best player in the league. He sits out a year, and he's never the same again.
Well, I mean, play-wise, but he did end up getting a deal.
But he didn't get the deal he was looking for in Pittsburgh.
No, I think he got the exact whatever contract Pittsburgh gave him the year that they were trying to sign him. I think that's what the Jets tried to give him.
Yeah, but now you have to, when you're figuring that contract, though, you have to put underneath there minus what he would have made that year he sat out.
Right.
So these guys might think, or getting advice, and remember now, Lamar Jackson does not have an agent. I mean, people can say a lot of things about agents. They can be slippery. They can be slimy. They can be a lot of things. But look, they are held by the league, the NFL in this case, to a certain level of standards on how they conduct themselves. And the one thing about agents that is so very valuable, if they're a good one, and there are a lot of good ones out there, is they will tell you things sometimes that you want to hear. The great ones are the ones that tell you things you don't want to hear. And right now, there's no one in Lamar Jackson's ear, at least that we know of, that is saying to him, Lamar, listen, there is no way on God's earth that there is zero upside. That's a question you always have to ask yourself. What's the upside to sitting out? Okay? Upside is you don't play football for a year. Is that good? Does that increase your value or a team's desire to have you come play for them? So that would mean if he sat out, he did not play the last 6 weeks of this year. So if he sat out this coming season, that would mean you're talking almost 2 years since he took a snap in the league. Who's giving him $180 million or $225 million for that? Nobody. Okay, what's the upside? Walking away from $35 or $40 million? Upside there? I don't see it. Based on what principle? Based on what?
The only thing that you can compare the situation to, in my opinion, is Deshaun Watson, where he was out for more than a year. And the situation surrounding him is different, right? He's not.
Well, it's very
charged.
Different than Deshaun Watson. Very different.
But a team eventually.
He was
traded.
suspended by the NFL.
Yeah, but he was going to sit out. He was going to get traded. He was going to find a team that was going to pay him after sitting out for 2 years, is what I'm getting at. So I think it's possible, but it's very, very slim that a good resolution comes from this. I just don't see what he can do. I mean, yeah, he can play, but he's already demanded a trade. I don't even think the Ravens want him. If you ask me, I think they should get rid of him. But that's my opinion on that.
He has no chance of getting a contract that he wants by sitting out. I mean, if he wants to prove to people and give himself listen, at the end of the day, here's the deal, okay? If he plays and plays like he's capable of playing, and he goes and plays on a franchise tag deal with the Ravens this season, takes him to the playoffs, maybe gets him to an AFC championship game. Who knows, right? Yep. Generally, when he plays, they go to the playoffs. They get to the playoffs this year and he barely played. But when he plays, they are a bona fide playoff championship level contending team by and large. Okay? If he goes and plays this year, plays his tail off, good leader, okay, stays healthy, he dramatically enhances his chances of getting that deal a year later. If he sits out, he has no chance. Somebody made the point in the chat, and you did too, about Watson. The Cleveland Watson deal is a total, unequivocal outlier deal made by a desperate franchise that has not won a playoff game. One game, they've won one, in seemingly forever.
A stinky franchise.
There's no question. So they were a desperate franchise. The Ravens are nowhere. They are the antithesis of a desperate franchise. So we'll see how it all plays out. What I do know is, boys, we have box lunch coming up today. Reed Mouse.
Tom, how's it going?
I mean, you had a T-shirt on the other day. 75, 80 degrees over the weekend. Sunshine all last week. Now we're at 39 and raining.
Had to pull back out the window.
Yeah, you did. You got the lumberjack mountain man sort of look.
You kind of look like a lumberjack, Tom.
There's no doubt. No doubt. I think the first thing people think of when they think of me is a lumberjack type.
Remember when you grew that beard out?
Yeah.
I missed that facial hair. I thought it looked good.
I might grow it back. But I got to find that stuff. None of you guys know anything about it. I got to find, because I let it grow all weekend. And I mean, and now it all comes in, it's all white. I'm not going to look like Santa Claus. I'm not that old yet. So I got to find that stuff that you can put in it if I'm going to grow it, make it look brown.
Some dye?
Touch of gray.
Touch of gray.
Is that what, touch of gray? Yeah.
Did you finish Breaking Bad?
I haven't watched an episode since we talked about it. I told you I was going to try over the weekend.
Yeah.
Too busy. We were busy all weekend, traveling all around, high school sports, that kind of thing. So, no. But I am going to get back at it. I spent half my weekend trying to get guests for this show. So we will try back at. Oh, boy. Oh. But we're thankful to Wayne Larrivee. We're thankful to Bobby Nightengale Jr. and Justin Wright. Tomorrow, we have Tracy Jones, joins us all the time. We had to change the time on him, by the way, because our other two guests tomorrow, really looking forward to it. Steve Serby is a columnist at the New York Post.
Well, I love Steve. I sat next to him last year
Yeah.
at the Sweet 16. Steve and I sat next to each other all weekend. He's great.
Crusty veteran.
He's awesome.
New York through and through, man.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want it told like it is, Serby's going to do it tomorrow. Talk about the Jets and the Giants. And also tomorrow, I'm really looking forward to, it's one of my favorite guys in the world, is Tim Ryan. Used to announce the NFL on Fox. He made the decision for family reasons about 3-4 years ago that he was just going to go broadcast the San Francisco 49ers games on radio there in the Bay Area. So he will join us tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll cover the Jets, the G-Men, your guys, G-Men.
G-Men.
That's right.
Daniel Jones.
And Tim Ryan will tell us what's going on with the Niners. Big league show tomorrow.
Packed show.
Big show. All right. It's time for Box Lunch. You guys ready to go?
Ready to roll.
Here we go. Box Lunch. Have a great day.
I must admit, I didn't think much of this show the first time I laid eyes on it. Seemed like a bunch of stiffs wasting nice
Worst
microphones.
trade of all time happened back in 1803. Go ahead. Napoleon Bonaparte traded the Louisiana Purchase for $3 million. Napoleon, what happened? Half the country for $3 million. You can't even get Tucker Barnhart for $3 million.
Then I came to realize
anymore.
these guys are funny.
And Justin Fields have identical stats the last 5 weeks about throwing the football. This guy, okay,
And
folks,
are
is a
some of the
fidget
best
spinner.
gamblers I've come to know.
If you're betting on USC and or TCU, let it be known you are a square.
TCU is going to hammer this team tomorrow night.
I hate to hear that.
Tomorrow
When we come back
afternoon.
in here on Monday, you're going to be happy as a lark because USC lost, but you're going to be wrong about TCU.
Get ready for the most useless hour of your day. It's time for Boxed Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Now, Casey, run that track.
I give this 7.1. I like this one, Casey.
I'll use a little more. How about that?
That's good. You know what? When you go and look up royalty-free music, if you've ever been on, one of those websites where you can get royalty-free music, all these things to, make video packages and whatnot. If I had to label that royalty-free song, it'd be like sports intro, because I feel like every time you click on, sports intro, what's this? And it sounds just like what you just heard right there. But this is Box Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. I'm Reed Mouse, joined along here. Paul Frister, Casey McCollister. Guys, how was your weekend?
Fantastic, Reed. How was yours? You talked to a lot of people this weekend.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. The Oklahoma Sooners. I didn't hear you earlier. Did the Muskies do well against the Huskies?
God. They did well. They didn't. They only won one, but they could have swept them. It is what it is. They were up in both losses. They were up 9-7 in the ninth inning of the third game. Gave up two 2-run homers. So it goes.
So it goes at Hayden Field. Great American Small Park.
I mean, honest to God, the ball got out. It could not have gone 311 feet, and it got out. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Well, you know what?
It giveth and it taketh.
You got to bounce back. There's more games to play.
That's right.
There's more games to play.
Oh, there's always more games to
There's
play.
always more games to play. But this weekend was a lot of fun. If you guys, I know you guys talked about it in Off the Bench, but we did the Miami Invitational this week, and Miami University put on a great, I don't even know how they got the Oklahoma Sooners to come to town. This was the first time that the Oklahoma Sooners, the number one team in the country, played a softball game in the state of Ohio. Played any team in the state of Ohio. And me and Casey drove out to Oxford, 10 in the morning. First game was at 1. And there was already fans here in Hamilton, 25 minutes away from the field, walking around in OU gear. Just fans. And you could tell they were young kids. It wasn't like parents or anything like that. It was fans just walking around downtown Hamilton. We get there, and we talked to a couple people from Miami, and they're like, people started lining up for this game. Oklahoma softball didn't play until 4 p.m. They said Oklahoma fans started lining up to get in the stadium at 7:30 in the morning. The entire Millett Hall filled with tailgaters. People came out. There was one couple that drove all the way from California to go watch Oklahoma softball in Ohio, and they didn't have tickets.
Every time I went back and refreshed the page in between innings of the Xavier games, I'd go in the half-inning breaks, and I'd check in on it, maybe throw something into the chat, whatever, hey, like the stream. And it felt like every time I refreshed the page, there was another 1,000 people that had joined in.
So we had originally Oklahoma was supposed to play Oakland in the morning. It was supposed to be like 11 a.m., and that game got canceled because of the storm that was ensuing on Sunday. So they shifted things around so they could get all the games in on Saturday. That game, we didn't take that off our YouTube channel till like 9 in the morning or something like that. There were 150 people waiting to watch that. 2 hours before the game was scheduled to go, there was 100 people watching, so we ended that, and people are already chatting like, when's this game? What's going to happen with this game? And yada, yada, yada. So we ended that. We had, I think, 800 concurrent viewers watching the first Miami game versus Oakland, and I looked to Casey as we go get something to eat in between games, and I said, all right, how many viewers are we going to get for this Oklahoma game? And we said, we'll get 1,000. We'll get 1,000 concurrent at one time viewers. No way we get 2,500. We had 2,500 before the first pitch.
Yeah. My guess with the way when I was looking at like the waiting and everything, I was sitting there talking with Schmaltz, and I said my guess was 5,000. That was kind of like I was just kind of thinking, because I was thinking to myself, all right, all these people, they either have to pay for Flow softball, or they might be watching on ESPN Plus or whatever, but you're finally getting a game that's not behind a paywall. So you're opening this up to a lot of people that maybe weren't able to watch Oklahoma softball before, whatever it might be. So I was thinking like 5,000, 6,000, and then I refresh the page and I see 12,000, 13,000, 14,000, 15,000. I'm going, all right, let's rock and roll here, fellas.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. And if you guys don't know anything about Oklahoma Sooners, they were 2-time national champs. And 62 games last year, they run ruled 40 of them. They had 40 run rules in 62 games. They have like 22 run rules in 40 games this year. The number one team in the country. Have won like 31 straight games. They pretty easily won these games. I don't know. If you took the best player that wasn't on Oklahoma in this invitational, I don't know if they can make the Sooners team. Carly Spade from Miami, the All-American third baseman. She's already like top 100 all-time in career home runs in NCAA history. She might be able to make the team. But other than that, it was jarring. It's truly, if you haven't sat down and appreciated fast-pitch softball, it might be more entertaining than baseball. Game's so much more compact. Casey, you've watched more baseball than you ever have before.
Yeah.
And you have been watching softball this year.
Right. I don't want to sound super biased, but I think Miami softball is a little better than Miami baseball.
Correct.
And it's a little easier to watch than the Reds sometimes. When the Reds play well, it's fun to watch the Reds. But Miami softball, at least versus Oklahoma, like you said, it was just crazy to see the disparity and talent level there. But it's a lot of fun. They were competing for the first 4 innings.
Yeah.
Like, it was a 4-1 ball game. It wasn't like they were getting blown out yet by the 4th inning. And the fans were even kind of surprised, too. They're like, we haven't run ruled them yet. This is Miami. Oh. Well, it got a little out of hand eventually. But it was a lot. It is a lot of fun, especially because these good teams can really hit it out of the park a lot.
Yeah.
And it can be like really out of the park.
Yeah, actually the best home run of the weekend was actually probably from Miami. Maddie Banks put one. They have this hitting tunnel probably 20 feet beyond the fence out in right field, and then it's, I don't know, 60 feet long. It probably has 2 or 3 tunnels in there, and she hit the roof and went out almost completely over this hitting tunnel. It was an absolute bomb. But you mentioned the Reds. And you went to the Reds game with Sir Boy Wonder on Friday. How was that?
It was a lot of fun. I won't lie. It was a lot of fun. We went with my best man, Thomas, as well. And eventually one of Sir Boy's friends came and joined us. And
Rico.
Shout
out Rico.
He's a good guy.
I met him at Moorline on opening day.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. We, me and Sir Boy stopped by the pro shop and we got ourselves some Viking hats.
I saw the helmets.
You bought those at the stadium? They sell those?
Yeah, $25.
Wow.
But they're really cheaply made. But it doesn't matter because you buy that Viking helmet and you feel the blood of a Viking just boiling inside of you.
Leif Erikson would be very proud.
I did it in honor of Leif Erikson for kicking him out of our chat the other day. I tried to praise Odin and Valhalla the best I could, even though the Reds, they had a losing effort that day.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. It was a great time. Thank you, Sir Boy.
All right, there's our quick recap on the weekend. Let's dive into the Reds. Obviously, yesterday, Luis Cessa did not pitch well. People are rumoring maybe he's going to go to the IL just because he's out of AAA options. He has not looked good to begin the season. I'll say this about Luis Cessa. I wouldn't hit the panic button yet. He's not a young, unknown talent for the Reds. He's been a good pitcher ever since he came over from the Yankees. And before he came over from the Yankees, he was a good pitcher there. Maybe he doesn't have the chops to start 36 games. I don't think that's the case. You're going to have to figure out someone to alleviate some of those innings. But he was fantastic 2 years ago, dipped in quality last year, and he has stunk to begin the season. But I think he will fall back to the mean, right? 31 years old. I just wouldn't go ahead and sell your Luis Cessa stock. I think he's going to be fine. I think with the Reds taking their lumps, there's going to be some bad games. And Luis Cessa has certainly had that through a couple of starts. I'm telling you to pump the brakes on the Luis Cessa hate. I guess the question to me would be who's gonna fill that spot. Luis Cessa is probably your best option to go. I know he stunk, but who else is gonna do it? Thoughts on Luis Cessa?
Buy low is what you're telling me.
Can't get any worse.
Yeah,
Right.
Literally can't get any worse.
And the path doesn't get a whole lot easier. I know the next couple weeks you're welcoming the Rays, who just set a record for most wins to start off a season. Can you sneak out a couple against one of the best teams in the American League? The Rangers come to town next. Or you play the Rangers next week. Now you got the Pirates and the Athletics mixed in there, but I think that the worst case scenario for Reds fans was that the season was over before May. And it's not. Yeah. I think the worst case scenario is that the season was over before June. And it's not. Yet. But it could be very quickly. And it's trending in that direction. And I'm just telling you guys. I told you it all off season is you guys understood that you're going to be bad, but I don't think you understood what that looked like. You have these games where you're down 10 runs in the first inning. Don't get upset. This is the team that you knew you were coming with at the beginning of the season. Don't get upset when they're 15 games out of first place at the end of May, the beginning of June. Just don't get upset. Don't get your hopes up, because that's all you got. That's all the Reds have had for years, is hope. Oh, man. They've got 6 prospects in the top 100. Let's get excited. We're turning the page. Oh, that team that you guys told me, the Cubs fan, that has no future, they also have 6 prospects in the top 100. And the Cubs, well, they're already competing. Should have swept against the Dodgers in L.A. So far beneath the rest of the division. The Cardinals, who were favored to win the Central, have played terrible. And they're still better than the Reds. The Brewers, with their aces, they're almost like a better version of the Reds. Their aces are better, more experienced. They've already got the pieces in the field. And then the Cubs, sneaking out there, winning ball games, won 3 straight series. And the Pirates swept the Red Sox, playing good ball, a lot of exciting ball. Yeah, their star shortstop goes on the injured list, but they're still playing well. It's tough. Tough sledding for the Reds fans. But guys, that's all my heel today. The price goes up for Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts signs what? Let me pull this up. 5 years, $255 million. Casey?
Yeah.
Are you concerned that Joe Burrow's contract just keeps getting higher? Keeps getting higher. Are you concerned?
I mean, I'm not concerned that they're not. I think they'll get a deal done. I'm just starting to feel like this team-friendly deal nonsense is I think that might be going out the window, possibly. Because I feel like they want to make him the highest-paid player. So that's at least $52 million a year.
Right, because Jalen Hurts just became, right?
Yeah, he just became the highest-paid. You're looking at over 180 million guarantees. Oof. That's a lot. It's a lot for a team that's not got a lot of cash on hand, like the Phillies might, or Philadelphia might, or.
I love that you're already slipping in some baseball teams on accident, because that just means you're becoming a fan, baby.
just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little nervous just about the future of the team once Joe Burrow's signed. I don't think anyone should worry about Joe Burrow not being signed. I think they'll get that done.
They're getting that done.
They'll get that
They're getting it done.
It's just a matter of what it looks like, right? I think that's what most people are concerned with is what does this look like? What is this going to do for the team going forward? And this is why I took the T. Higgins thing somewhat with a grain of salt, because I mean, it just a deal like this can completely change the outlook of your team, right? It can completely throw negotiations out the window. Joe Burrow could just be like, hey, man, I want 55. I want to be the highest guy with no doubts. I don't want just $1 million over. I want, not that Joe Burrow's going to be demanding that, but it could, all those things factor into a deal like this. So,
do you think that the Reds, see, I'm doing it now too. Do you think that the Bengals have to beat out the Chargers and signing Joe Burrow before Herbert's contract, because he's going to get an extension?
Yeah, but it's not going to be higher than Jalen Hurts, right?
It might. The price keeps going up.
It might. Chargers could mess around and do that. They are somewhat of a stinky franchise, but that's another opinion I got for later.
For later. Good tease.
Yeah, I mean, they could be looking at a potential race. I won't lie, but I really hope it doesn't come down to that. I mean, not that I don't want Joe Burrow to be the highest paid player, and I don't want, I want
It'd be
Joe
awesome if he wasn't the highest paid player.
Yeah, like at the same time,
that would be awesome.
It would be great, It would be like, oh wow, we got a really good deal for what we think is, the Bengals GOAT. So yeah, I mean, I would. I don't know. It was just, I don't know. I don't know how to feel, because I'm not afraid that we won't get a deal done. I'm just afraid of what the team will look like in the future. That's what it does for me.
It feels like at this moment that Joe Burrow and the Bengals, I'll give this analogy. There's a neighborhood that you really want to move into, and someone's selling a house. You met them out a couple times, and they're like, yeah, we're about to sell our house. You want to move in this neighborhood? Yeah, we can make a deal, and you shake hands on it. But you don't actually make a deal. And while you're waiting on, maybe some logistical things for that deal to happen, houses up around that house and that neighborhood selling left and right and going for way over what you handshook for. And now you sit down with your wife or your significant other and you say, we got to pull the trigger on this deal right now, or the person we shook hands with, they're going to want more money. And do we let another sale go through? Do we let Justin Herbert's deal go through? That might be less, and then you can equal it out to Justin Herbert's deal? Or do you get before the Justin Herbert deal and say, oh, listen, we got to get Joe Burrow right now, because the last thing you want is Justin Herbert to make more money than Jalen Hurts, and now you got to top another contract? Because that was the rumor, right? The Bengals want to make Joe Burrow the highest paid player in the league, and he's earned it. But what do you do here? What do you do here? And we talked about this last week. The 4 to 5 year deals, which is looking more and more likely to happen, don't interest me at all. Don't do anything for me. I want the Patrick Mahomes deal. I want the 10-year, $500 million. I want to lock him up long term. And a 5-6 year deal doesn't do it for me. Just doesn't. It doesn't free up cap space in the immediate future when Joe Burrow is going to be at his best. And that's what I want. I want him to be a Bengal. I want that to be done deal, but I want it to be for the next decade. All right.
Draft bets.
Yeah. So Betfred Sportsbook, sponsor of this show, has already put out some bets on the draft. And I want to ask you guys, because we talk about sports gambling here quite a bit. I want to know what your guys' opinion is on these bets on the draft. Are you ready for this? You guys ready to put on your captain hat? Put on your gambling hat? The draft is 10 days away. It's next week. These are the bets that Betfred has. The over-under for defensive backs taken in the first round. Actually, let's start with quarterbacks. The over-under for quarterbacks taken in the first round is 4.5. Are you taking under 4.5 at minus 155 or over 4.5 on quarterbacks taken? And you can list off the quarterbacks that you think are going to be taken in your mind. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis. Anthony Richardson's probably going to get taken as well. But who's after that?
Who's the fifth? I legit, who is the fifth guy?
Yeah, I want to say maybe Hendon Hooker or McKee. I think the Stanford guy. I don't know, man.
So I guess what I'm
Seems like
taking is the under feels pretty safe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's up? Minus 155.
Minus 155. That
They
doesn't
must be really high on Hendon Hooker because I had heard it kicked around, but I hadn't heard it that he was.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, he's surefire first round. No.
Yeah, on some certain draft boards, they have Hendon Hooker above Will Levis. Wow. So, which is wild because he's old, right? I mean, he's
25.
25 years old. I mean, if you find him and it works out, then that's it.
All right.
But so on this one, I'm looking at right now: Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, 3 and 4, and then they have Hendon Hooker at 5th, and Tanner McKee at 6th. So you're just basically betting on whether or not Hendon Hooker or Tanner McKee get drafted in the first round at minus 150 odds, saying that's not going to happen. So I'll take the under.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll go under too.
Yeah. Casey, how in tune with the NFL draft are you?
Pretty in tune.
Okay. 5.5 on offensive linemen taken in the first round. Do you think 6 offensive linemen are going to be taken? The over is minus 220. So they think it's going to happen.
So
are you getting value?
You got Paris Johnson, Skronsky from Northwestern, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Broderick Jones. That's from Georgia. You've got Anton Harrison from Oklahoma. You've got Darnell Wright from Tennessee. Osiris, possibly. That's 6 right there.
Offensive linemen, the under, and the quarterbacks, and we're going to pay a lot of juice on the under and running backs. I don't think Gibbs is going to get taken in the first round. Thomas throws up a good point. What if Max Duggan someone just reaches on Max Duggan? Is that possible? No, because you could get him in the 3rd round. Yeah. Why would you waste a first round pick on him?
I mean, the Browns have done more crazy things in the past, like drafting Johnny Manziel, but I don't know, man. I don't see. I would take the under on the quarterbacks. I would take the under on the running backs. Actually, so honestly, I would actually take $10 on the over on the running backs. Why risk $550 when I only have to risk 10 for someone to just pick Jahmyr Gibbs at 32? Like, Kansas City could pick.
You'd win $40 on that bet if it hits. You'd win $40 on that bet if it hits.
I would do that. That's what I would do for the running back situation. At least if you're looking at value there.
You do like value. You're a man of value. Casey likes that plus sign. He doesn't drink that juice. He needs that plus sign to feel comfortable. Casey, you know what I love about you?
What?
You slide in digs at the Cleveland Browns every show just very quickly. You're like, well, the Browns took Johnny Manziel. That's what I love, because you know what? They're just a godforsaken franchise. I hope someday this company grows and we look at where people are viewing our content and there's just a big old void right there in northeastern Ohio, because Cleveland, what a bad town. I bought tickets to a Cleveland game yesterday, though. I'm going to go with my dad's birthday was this weekend. I'm going to take him out, and right around Father's Day, we're going to go to a Cleveland Guardians game. Never been there.
Nice.
Okay.
And then we're going to, the next day, go to PNC Park. So
sick. Cool.
So it's going to be a nice little trip, but that's that. All right, the only bet I have, I don't know if you guys have any bets for tonight as we wrap this show up and get to Wheel of Lunch, is the puck line. NHL tonight, take our beloved Dallas Stars, -1.5. They'll win by 2 on the puck line, plus 180. If you're just a beloved Dallas Stars fan like myself.
Okay, Reed, I have a question for you. Serious question for you.
Yeah.
You and I, on December 19th, went and saw, I think it was the 19th, saw the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Dallas Stars play. We were in person. It's the first time I'd ever been to an NHL game.
Yep.
How much National Hockey League hockey have you watched outside of that game?
So that was about 60 minutes.
That was 60 minutes. How many? So You're given 60 minutes. Including those 60 minutes, how many minutes of hockey have you watched this season?
Give me cap the line on how many minutes. I'll tell you.
64 and a half.
Under. 60 and a half would have still gotten the under. I have not watched a single second of our Stars this year. Our beloved Stars, other than that game.
Reed, I have not watched. I guess I could say maybe I would take the over on 64 and a half because only because ESPN has the rights to hockey now. So I'm sure at some point at like 11:30 at night when I forgot to change the channel after a college basketball game or something, and I just left hockey on, that maybe my eyes glanced up there. No idea.
How great of a spectator sport is hockey, though?
Oh, man, I was locked in.
20 minutes, you lock in on the rink. I mean, we were very close, too. I mean, we're right there.
We had great seats.
Shout out. But you watch for 20 minutes, you lock in, then you get a little intermission. You step back. And when we're talking about spectator sports, you know, hockey's great. How great has baseball been to watch? I saw someone tweeting about the in-game experience of going to a baseball game now. People are locked in. The game, losing 30 minutes, it trimmed the fat. It's so much better. Remember when people were complaining about all these rule changes? And we're a month in, and people forgot about them. Almost unanimous that people like it. The big bases, man, those things look like pizza boxes out there. People are stealing left and right, and it's more fun. I don't like the shift being outlawed. Well, there's a lot more singles. There's a lot more base hits. These lefties are all of a sudden getting through the infield. A lot more action. Pitch clock. Why do we need a pitch clock? Play the game how it's always been played. Well, you trim 30 minutes off, and the game is much more tolerable to watch now. Much more. You're getting Casey watching baseball now. That's what we're talking about. Rule changes. And I tell you, you guys are going to warm up on the Manfred men. It makes extra innings. There's nothing worse than boring extra innings, which happens a lot. The extra innings rule is great. I wouldn't even care if they implemented it in the postseason. It's a great rule. You had 9 innings to determine a winner. Every single sport, except sans, basketball? Changes the rules a little bit.
Even basketball goes to 5 minutes. They don't play a whole nother quarter.
Shorten it.
Yeah.
Right. Don't just keep doing what we're doing. Make something happen. And that's all they're doing. The Manfred men.
Everybody hates the penalty shootout in soccer, and it still determines the World Cup. You got to figure something out.
I actually like the penalty thing.
I agree, Case.
Oh, I mean, yes.
Makes it a lot more fun to watch.
I do too, but I'm also an American saying that, so my opinion doesn't hold much weight.
Right.
Yeah,
so.
true.
All right, what's on the wheel of lunch? What's on the docket for this Monday? I cannot eat lunch with you guys because you guys still haven't made Leif Erickson a moderator.
Oh, that's right. Throw Culver's on there. That sounds really good today.
Burger.
Yeah.
Got to put Sonic on there. Let's put a sub shot. I love a good sale. Let's put McAllister's.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, Casey. I got a story. Speaking of McAllister's. I was hanging out with my friend this past week, and they brought up the fact I was talking about, Chatterbox and stuff like that, and said something about you. I was like, Casey. And my friend goes, oh, my God, Reed, why didn't you ever tell me about Casey? And I was like, what do you mean, what about Casey? He's like, that's Lance McAllister's son. I was like, no, it ain't. not even the same last name. He's like, oh, well, my buddies were talking about it, and they said that was Lance McAllister's son. So apparently you have the same lineage as Lance McAllister, even though your names not even the same name.
Not even the same name.
No.
We
get mistaken quite a bit.
Do you?
No, not one bit. That's the first I heard of that one. That's good.
All right.
That's
all right. So we got Sonic, Taco Bell.
Jersey
throw.
Let's try it one more time, Panda. You want to try it one more time, Paul?
Third time. I'll try it a third time.
You got to try everything 3 times to know whether or not you like it.
But if we strike out on this one, I'm off the Panda train. All right. Let's go.
You know what I forgot? I forgot to put the sound on there for the folks at home.
See it, Culver's. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Paul was really hoping for Culver's.
Man, I really wanted Culver's.
All right.
All right.
That's a trade.
All right,
You would have taken that.
I'll take that trade. I'll take that trade.
Now he's trying to get Sonic off there.
Sonic is hanging around.
It's just hanging out.
Oh, no.
See you, jerseys.
We're
We're still fine. We're still fine.
Oh, boy. I will go to Sonic today.
Yeah.
If this rolls.
Won't have to.
Don't have to.
That's
What a
tough,
shame.
Mouse Cop.
See ya. See ya,
That's
Sonic.
Tough, Mouse Cop.
2 good options here.
We need, what do you guys call him? Toxic Trace? Back.
McAllister's.
We're going to Lance's. Lance's Deli. All right.
All right.
Thank you, guys. This has been the Box Lunch. We'll be back Wednesday. We have a lot of fun. This is the chat show. We still have the Power Rankings coming up this Friday. You know what we're going to do this Wednesday? Casey told that story about the pH balance of Pawnee water. I think we do a little science experiment in here, in show, live, to show these people just how great Pawnee water truly is. It's the natural limestone filtration that really, really puts it to the test. So that's what we're going to do. Guys, this has been Box Lunch presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Reed Mouse, Paul Fritcher, Casey McAllister. We'll see you on Wednesday.